So do you think they'll make it? Ford?
I think they will. They've got a lot. Getting rid of the cars and the trucks, though, is definitely, or getting rid of all the cars is definitely interesting.
Oh, you sweetheart. Did you see? No. Hi, Dan. Good. How are you?
Yeah, I think they're sadly mistaken.
Yeah, they're going to be diving into that. They,
How much carnage do you think we're going to have?
what do you mean?
What percentage of people are going to die
Oh,
or maimed?
significantly less than what we have now, I think.
Okay. You'll see. Just let the grids go down and the satellites go down and help the skelter. The chaos theory. It will prevail.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there'll be some issues. But
I'll have backup plans that lay out. Sure you
And they like sunshine.
Might have just stopped up. Or the flower.
Yeah, my new one.
From the hospital.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mayor Pro Tem Osnick will give the invocation.
May we be graced with wisdom and compassion as we make our decisions tonight. Amen.
Roll call, please.
Hackley.
Here.
Ambrose. Costanzo.
Here.
Locke. Lublin.
Here.
Osnick.
Here.
Robertson.
Okay, could I have a motion, please, to excuse Councilmember Locke?
So move.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the next is a request for agenda changes. What we would like to do tonight is move new business item 1, the proposed draft for the plan unit development, to do immediately after request for agenda changes. And that will allow the public, I'm sorry, we'll do it after approval of minutes. And then that will allow the public to, be discussion after they've heard the presentation. So when we go into audience participation, the first part will be to ask questions about the PUD, and then we'll go on to any other items that the audience wants to discuss. Are there any other agenda changes?
I do, Madam Mayor. Could we add to the new business discussion on the city sidewalks? I guess it would be number 2, since we're moving up new business to audience participation.
You want to discuss one, I'm sorry?
The city sidewalks, I want to have
Where do you wanna put that?
under new business.
Okay, so that'd be number 3.
Whatever number you want to give it.
Yeah, whatever, I guess it'll be 3, we're moving
Since
it up.
one moved up, so.
Correct.
Anything else? Any other changes? Okay. Alrighty, approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the meeting of June 18th, 2019, please?
I'll make that motion. I think there's a correction over here on page 16. Let's read that.
Well, let's get a second first.
I'll second it.
Okay. So where are you at on 16?
Oh, let's see here. Portion there where it says that we're discussing the social media policy. It just says social policy, so either to say social media policy or just policy. Page 16.
What paragraph?
Yeah, I'm not finding it right away.
Page 17 at the top.
Okay,
16 over here.
top of 17.
Top of 17.
Okay. Get us on the right
Oh, no,
page.
I'm sorry, I was reading that off the.
Was that a social media policy, is that what you wanted to say?
Right.
Insert media?
Yes, please. Either that or just a policy, you know, either that or remove the social, because it defines social media in the next.
Yeah.
Have a media policy.
Right, so.
That works better.
Clears it up.
Media policy.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Roll call, please.
Costanzo.
Yes.
Black. Lublin.
Yes.
Osnick.
Yes.
Robertson.
Yeah.
Ambrose.
Yes.
Ackley.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we will start the discussion on the draft of the plan unit development agreement for Beechwood condominiums.
Good evening. Chelsea's going to help me out with getting my presentation started here, so bear with me for a moment.
Not a problem.
Okay. Let's try that again.
What?
See?
I can't see. Thank you, Chelsea. Good evening. I'm Mike Knowles. I'm with Diffin Umlor, and I'm representing Pulte Homes of Michigan tonight. We are here to present to you the Beechwood Final PUD for your consideration. The Beechwood PUD is consistent with the preliminary approval that you granted last year. At that time, since that time, the unit count has been reduced from 44 units down to 36 units. Lake privileges were relinquished for all of the units within the PUD, And the buffers were added between adjacent properties. The basin is still oversized to help control downstream flooding. And these benefits all remain in the plan before you tonight. We request your continued support, and we are grateful for the recommendation of approval that we received from Plan Commission 2 months ago. Beechwood is consistent with the approved preliminary PUD, provides a significant benefit to the community and is consistent with the Walled Lake Master Plan. Beechwood achieves master plan goals while solving a community problem. The change that we are here to talk about tonight are minor differences from the approved PUD, and they include 2 items. One is retention versus detention, and the other is a partial waiver from tree replacement. There's another item on your agenda tonight under unfinished business, which is the second reading of a change to your vegetation ordinance, which greatly brings us in line with what we were requesting previously before the consideration of the change to where we are today. Let's first briefly discuss the stormwater system, as it does provide an immense benefit for all of the residents of Walled Lake. The Beechwood system is designed to collect, store, and discharge water in a way that will reduce flooding. So who is getting hurt by the current situation? Our development, which you see here outlined in red, is approximately 10 acres. The drainage area around the property is here in yellow, and that is about a 20-acre drainage area. That 20 acres has no stormwater controls currently. So it sends a tremendous amount of water from the top of this hill down this line, ultimately into a wetland and out to Walled Lake. So the folks along Gamma, I don't need to tell those folks, get inundated with water and have been getting inundated with water for years, particularly along their rear yards. Folks on Omega, folks on Oak Grove, all end up getting this discharge from this 20-acre property, as well as a larger drainage area, which you'll see on another slide. If Beechwood is approved tonight, the flood control on South Drive, Omega Road, and Oak Grove will be significantly improved. Residents in Sparks Lane, Tri-A, and East Bay, and Wynwood Place are all affected by this runoff. How bad is it? The water volume that will be captured and stored in the basin on our property is 156,000 cubic feet. It's hard to imagine what 156,000 cubic feet looks like, but it's equivalent to 12 million gallons or 94 million bottles of water. This is the amount of water that runs down the hill uncontrolled during every 100-year storm event. The downstream residents in the watershed will see a 15.3% reduction in runoff. This is a continued benefit that the Beechwood development provides by capturing that stormwater and controlling the runoff. So what changed? The oversized basin was considered a significant community benefit when the preliminary plan was approved. This is substantially unchanged. What did change was the outlet design. The final soils report indicated that the soil would not allow the construction of a retention basin. A retention basin doesn't have a defined outlet. The water is supposed to percolate into the ground as its primary outlet. The soils would not allow this and would get plugged up and silted over. It wouldn't perk into the ground like it was supposed to. To remedy that problem, the design changed to a detention basin, which releases water in a minimized way along a specified route. It is also much more expensive. To design a system that would actually work, the outlet was configured to discharge at a controlled rate to an established Oakland County drain in the Leon Road ditch, where it flows south through the existing Oakland County outlet to Walled Lake. Well, does the Leon Road ditch work? Not currently, but we propose to fix that too. The Leon Road ditch is sized to handle the storm discharge which we propose to send it. But the driveway culverts restrict approximately 70% of the flow going through that ditch. So the improvements to Leon Road include reshaping the ditch so it flows properly, replacing drive approaches along the route, buried and undersized culverts will be replaced, and the work will occur in the public road right-of-way at Pulte's expense. The changes to the stormwater management system will cost about $300,000. That's additional to the amount that was approved with the preliminary plan. The new approaches, correctly sized culverts, controlled velocity, and reduced ditch bank erosion are all added benefits to those residences along the route. We have requested WRC evaluate the Leon drain, which is currently in process right now.
So you're asking me to vote on something that's still in process?
Let him finish his
Sorry.
presentation, please.
So, a question, are we moving the water to flood different people in a different location? The answer is no.
Yeah.
The Leon drain discharges into a wetland at the west end of Leon Road. So the same volume of water we talked about before will be routed there. Why won't that cause flooding? What's the difference? The difference is made up of several factors. First, the water will be released at a controlled rate. You see this area in blue is 126 acres. That acreage is tributary to Wall Lake Outlet W6, which is in that dark blue area. It's going to be reduced by the 20 acres that are highlighted in yellow. The rainwater will be captured and stored in the light blue area here. So this area used to drain down the hill into this 127 acre drainage area. All of this area drains all down into this red area. We're taking out this yellow area. We're storing it in an oversized basin. The rate that we pump down the stormwater is controlled. That's the difference. So it's released slowly after the storm surge has passed. It'll take 4 days to pump all the water through the Leon Road ditch instead of just a few hours for uncontrolled runoff to inundate the downstream folks during a storm surge. The discharge rate from the basin is 91% less than the undeveloped agricultural rate allowed by city and county standards. This limited discharge will ensure that there is an insignificant impact to downstream homes, roads, drains, or wetlands. The second factor is that the water is routed through an engineered public roadside ditch and storm system rather than overland flow through private backyards. Well, can the wetland down here can it handle the water that we're sending it? Based on an analysis of the existing wetlands, the Beechwood water changes the surface level of that wetland by 1/4 of an inch. It's negligible. It has almost zero impact. Walled Lake is maintained at legally established lake levels. It's a kettle lake. It doesn't have a river inlet. It's fed by groundwater and by stormwater runoff. So the lake cannot exceed elevation 934 under normal rain events because it's controlled at the south end by a weir. We performed the Leon drain calculations, that 1/4 inch calculation, setting the Walled Lake at the flood elevation, at the 934 elevation, and it still only came up to this 1/4 inch impact. The wetland remains at the low water level for the 4 days that Beechwood is pumping the 100-year event water down through the outlet. So a question comes up. Why has the water been unusually high at that location over the last few years? The wetland has a 15-inch drain that runs from the wetland out to the lake. It's owned by the Oakland County WRC. The county inspected it, put a camera in it, and found that it had unauthorized alterations on both ends of that drain. On the one side, there was a pipe extension, which you see a picture of right here. And they found that homeowner that added that extension actually did a good job on the installation, and there was no obstruction on that end. The WRC indicated they plan to leave that pipe in place as is. On the other end, however, which you see down here, the outlet is obstructed by a seawall and a 6-inch metal pipe, taking that outlet down from 15 inches down to 6 inches, which creates a restriction, which is why that wetland has been unusually high over the last several years. That restriction is going to be repaired by WRC in September of this year. I received a confirming email from WRC today indicating that they chose that schedule because they wanted to wait until the lake season was over, so they just didn't disrupt people, utilizing the lake edge and the beach. They wanted it to be off season, so they scheduled it for September. Part of the fee that Pulte Homes pays to change the drainage district, that yellow piece I told you we're taking it out of the big 126 acres and sending it down Leon Drain, the fee that Pulte pays for that. Overall drainage summary. The Beechwood development benefits surrounding properties in several ways by capturing, storing, and discharging water that will reduce flooding and uncontrolled runoff. The basin discharge at a controlled rate to ensure an insignificant impact to downstream homes, roads, drains, and the existing wetland. The folks here in yellow will see less runoff coming through their rear yards. The folks here in green will see less runoff coming from the adjacent property because it gets picked up by a rear yard storm system and stored in the basin. The folks here in red, their property currently runs off and adds to the problem for these other folks. This basin is being discharged at a controlled rate down through the Leon Drain and out. These folks in here in purple will benefit because the ditch will finally work right. Their culverts aren't going to be buried and undersized, and they'll have replaced drive aprons. These folks down over here are going to benefit because of the investigation into the Leon Drain outlet. This is going to be repaired so that the wetland drains properly. So there's a whole bunch of adjacent properties who are going to benefit from the approval of this plan. Trees. I have a lot of slides on trees, and a lot of this you already know. So I won't belabor it. I'm going to speed through this part of the presentation because you have already observed and taken action on what I have observed and have presented to the Plan Commission. And so I'll just go through it quickly for you. Back in 1940, this property was an open field. It had hedgerows of trees around the perimeter. And over the years, when the farm fields went fallow, it started to fill in the middle. So today, we have done not only an analysis of the aerial photography from 1940, but we went out and we tagged every single tree on the property. And what we found were the largest, oldest specimens, healthiest quality specimens are all, as you would expect, along the perimeter of the property. What we've done is we've incorporated this into our design by creating a variable width preservation zone that runs anywhere from 29.5 feet to 50 feet around the property, 29.5 feet in the minimum, that preserves all these trees. In the longer presentation, I go and list some of the specimen trees and some of the different quality specimens that are out there. I'll spare you from that unless you want to hear it. But the point is that we analyzed the property, we analyzed the existing vegetation on the property, and our tree preservation strategy is tailored to this specific piece of property to preserve trees that are going to be able to survive in the long run. They're going to have open space, they're going to have air and light, They create a buffer between adjacent uses. Their critical root zones remain undisturbed at the rear yards of the property so that they don't end up dying by trying to save a tree that's got pavement all around it. So we focused our preservation along the ones that were most likely to survive, the oldest and nicest specimens on the site. Two of your master plan goals are to promote screening and sustainability, and this plan achieves both of those. So I got into a little bit with the Plan Commission, listing out some of the issues with your existing ordinance. You've already identified those issues, and tonight on your agenda, I see you're at the second reading to enact some changes to that. So I won't go through those with you tonight, but I will just touch on them. Some of the things that you're taking care of are diseased trees, invasive species, hazard trees, and also to promote development and preservation so that there isn't an undue burden on properties that are fully wooded with no opportunity to be developed. You guys have changed your ordinance, or are in the process of changing your ordinance to address these issues, which I highlighted in the Plan Commission presentation. So, the tree summary, the plan before you tonight will not alter the essential character of the community. It won't reduce the benefits provided by the trees. We'll have a healthy environment and clean air. We're preserving trees that will add beauty and value to both our property and the surrounding properties. We're preserving the trees that ensure sustainability and shade, provide stormwater uptake, and the screening between properties. In our plan, we have over 300 new trees that are being planted on the site. Anywhere where the buffer is thin, we're planting a lot of new trees, 300 new trees, while preserving the oldest and highest quality trees through our plan. So, I wanted to thank you. I wanted to thank the Planning Commission, the staff and the consultants for working with us over the last year to help us perfect this plan into something that we hope that you will support tonight. I'm available to answer any of your questions. Look forward to working in the community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I think our city engineer's here for a couple of things today. Maybe you want to call the audience and see what their questions
Well,
are.
at first I was gonna see if council had any questions.
Well, either way you
But I
want to
didn't
do
know
it,
if
but
it
he's
was,
going to
you're
be
just
here.
here for questions, you don't have anything you wanna present, right?
Right.
Okay, all right.
He can answer things about that, where he got a couple other projects he's here for, but he can respond to some of that.
Okay.
After the council's asked questions and the audience needs to get involved too.
All right. Does council have any questions of either the developers
I
or?
have a question for the developer. I'm reading the plans here. It says 254 trees, not 300 trees. Is that accurate? Which is the accurate number?
There's 307 new trees that are planted on site. 254 of them are considered replacement trees because you have other tree requirements, including frontage trees. Our frontage along Decker Road requires a certain number of trees. There's an open space tree planting requirement. Some of those requirements can be satisfied by preserving existing trees, others can't. So we've got street trees, open space trees, and frontage trees. And so the total new trees on the site are that 300 number that I quoted. The 264 that you're looking at is the number that count as replacement trees.
Okay, any other council member?
You mentioned that the Water Resources is now in the process of reviewing the drainage system. What's all involved in that process, and they verify the numbers and make sure that what it says is really happening?
Yes, so there's 3 Oakland County Water Resources Commission reviews that are required as part of this development. One is for sewer, one is for water, and one is for drainage. The sewer has already been approved by WRC. Just recently, I spoke with the reviewer this morning. He confirmed that he sent over an approval back to the city consultant, who will then forward it on to the state for that permit. The second is the water, which required a flow test. That flow test has been completed. There is sufficient capacity in the water lines, so that one is in the process of being approved, and there's a question as to which water main to tap, because there's an 8-inch and a 12-inch, and they're working that out between the county and the city. It's a matter of preference. Both are available and both have capacity. The third is the drainage. The drainage is reviewed by Jeff Wilson of WRC, and all that requires is a drainage amendment. You saw in my presentation that that yellow area was being taken out of the blue area and being sent down to the Leon drain area. That requires a formal amendment. What ends up happening is that drainage area, because it now, instead of automatically running down the hill, it's being detained and discharged into a different drainage area. It requires a map amendment through the WRC. That is in process. The only things that we have to do is sign their agreement, which I received today. It's standard boilerplate language. Number two, pay the fee to move it from one to another. It's about $14,000, and Pulte has no issue with paying that transfer fee. That happens after this body gives its final approval, if it chooses to approve this project. And then the last thing is that repair out at the lake at the outlet pipe. That's going to occur whether or not we move forward or not, because now that they're aware of it, it has to go back to the 15-inch drain. The only difference is they have money to repair it, because after we pay the $14,000, they don't have to special assess the people in the current drainage area, which is about 40 acres of people, to make that repair. So that's what's going on with the WRC.
So they've already approved what is happening with the drainage. All that's left to be done is just the paperwork and the map, is what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay, so they're in agreement with your figures and your calculations?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question about the retention pond.
Yes, sir.
The maintenance of it, annually, biannually, whatever, as it fills in from dirt, stuff like that, what does that look like to keep it to full capacity?
Yes, so the maintenance between the retention and detention pond, a retention pond requires more silt maintenance, because that was the kind that was supposed to percolate in, and it would get silted up, and they'd have to go in and dredge out the pond. Since we're not doing that, the maintenance that's going to be involved in the pond is more like mowing around the outlet pipes where there is riprap. If any silt or debris gets built up in there, they would have to remove and replace the riprap that's around those outlet pipes. And then also the pump maintenance. I mentioned about pumping it at a controlled rate through the Leon drain. If that pump needs maintenance, if it needs replacement, the homeowners association is responsible for all of that maintenance. As a backup, as protection, the city of Walled Lake has the right and an easement to go in and do that maintenance if the homeowners association fails to meet its duty, and can charge them on their taxes to pay for that maintenance. So that's all part of the PUD agreement that guarantees that the homeowners association will take care of their maintenance. Those are private improvements that they're responsible to maintain. But if they fail to do so, it has an impact on the community, and Walled Lake has the right to remedy that by going in and taking action.
At whose expense?
Whose taxes?
Anyone else?
Thank you.
What we'll do now is go into audience participation. At the end of the meeting, we do have an executive session regarding the agreement. And I'm assuming after the executive session, then we'll come out and vote. Okay? But we're not going to interrupt the meeting to go into executive session. So we will open it up to audience participation. Like I say, I'm asking first for those who have questions about this development, and then any other audience participation to follow after that. So if everybody will do it that way, I would thank you. anyone with questions on this development? Randy?
Just questions or make up?
Just come up, state what you have, and
If this development proceeds, how do you control the mosquito population in this retention pond? Mosquitoes are no longer just a nuisance, but they're a health hazard. We got West Nile here already. Who knows how long before Zika makes its way north or something else? How do you control all of the additional mosquitoes from breeding in that pond? That's gonna be behind my house. Are there gonna be circulating pumps? Are there gonna be chemicals put in? How will they affect the animals? How are you gonna control that?
As a matter of order, did you want me to respond
yeah,
to
let's
each
address the
questioner?
chair, and then we'll let him answer the questions, okay? Because when you're talking that way, we're not hearing very well, at least I'm not hearing very
So
well.
what
I'm concerned
I
about
understand
that.
what your question is, but if you want to address, can you address an answer to his question at this point?
I think
It's a very legitimate
it
concern.
would be more prudent to have him answer all of those questions after everybody asked their questions.
No. Why get diluted answers?
One at a time so he remembers them.
Please, let's do it, one speaker at a time.
So,
Let me ask first, Randy, is this the only question that you have?
No.
Okay, finish what you want, and then he will answer your questions, okay? We'll do one person at a time with whatever questions you have.
How long we got?
You got 3 minutes, dear.
On questions or statements?
Okay.
I'll start on the questions
I'm
now.
not gonna hold, why don't you, can we get a chair so he doesn't?
I'm fine, thank
You're
you.
fine? Okay.
Yes. No, I'm fine, thank you.
Outline what you have.
Yeah, I just found out about this meeting last night, again, with no notice that I believe I was supposed to be given, since it's adjacent property. I just pulled stuff off the website, seeing all these other changes, and I'm seeing now that in the plans, you're asking for also only a 5-foot side to side from the houses, where the current development requires a minimum of 10 or a combination of 25. Now you're asking for 10 feet between these houses. I can spit further than that. I don't understand why that reduction. That's another main concern besides, which all comes back to the density. It's great if something could help the natural flow, but by building all this in the roads, you're stopping all the water that goes down, and you're having to create all these drains. So now I'm concerned about if that's gonna come through, how's that gonna affect me, my quality of life, my neighbor's quality of life, the mosquitoes, besides the light pollution, the sound pollution, all the wildlife, I guess it's not a question because you have no way to answer that. I mean, we have wildlife back there now that we've never had in the last 50 years. We have red fox, we have eagles that come from Mayberry and hunt. We have hawks, we have wild turkeys. There's all kinds of wildlife back there now. But for my direct health, if this goes through, I'm concerned about the mosquitoes. If people want to buy a house that's 10 feet away from the next house, I guess that's their choice. The next relevant point is the health of the community. I like to sit in my backyard yet. It's wonderful. I get trees all around. I see the deer come. I see the groundhogs come and eat the clover, and you see the fawns chasing after the turkeys. I want to be able to sit out there still and not have swarms of mosquitoes on me.
Okay,
Thank you.
please.
Thank you for your questions. Regarding the side yard setbacks, the PUD is in place so that flexibility can be incorporated into the design to meet certain master plan goals. By clustering the houses close together, it gave us an opportunity to preserve the open spaces, which I referred to earlier in the presentation. Under normal circumstances, we could develop right up to the property lines. But all of that additional area that we're putting in a permanent conservation area has to come from somewhere. And so where it comes from is the houses are placed closer together. So that is a response to your question about why the houses are so close together. Second, regarding notice. This project has been under consideration for about a year and a half.
Yep.
There have
Been under
been
stress for a year and a half.
there have been public notices for all the public hearings. This is technically not a public hearing, but your city council has opened it up to questions from its residents so that we could have exchanges like this to promote communication, to have communication, and to be able to have responses to your questions. So the public hearing at the Plan Commission was open specifically for that, and that requires a notice, including the notice that's placed in the paper. This meeting doesn't require that same notice, but there have been multiple public hearings on this project, and I commend your city council for opening up and being so transparent with the residents and giving opportunities for this type of dialogue. Next, mosquitoes. So I live on a 5,000 square foot lot in Plymouth, and my house has a 6 foot setback from my neighbor's property line. Our houses are 12 feet apart. I pay for spraying mosquitoes. I have no water on my property whatsoever. I pay for spraying my mosquitoes, and there's still a ton of mosquitoes. And when I talk to my mosquito guy, he says, unless everybody else does it too, it doesn't really put a dent into it. Mosquitoes lay their eggs in stagnant water, and really you need a comprehensive mosquito abatement program in a very large area. Walled Lake is a 650 acre lake with 6,200 acres of drainage area that goes to it, with open ditches, draining that way, and that's where the mosquitoes come from. So while we could employ additional mosquito abatement, which I'm not opposed to, the homeowners association has to do certain maintenance anyways. They have to mow the lawn, keep the noxious weeds down, keep everything in good working order. They could add spraying for mosquitoes there, but unless everybody in the entire area also sprays for mosquito, it isn't gonna make a bit of difference. The mosquitoes are gonna continue. I should also note that all the water I talked about, the 156,000 cubic feet of water, the 12 million gallons of water that comes down in every rain event, comes down with or without us. It comes down and it sits in the property, and it sits in your rear yards, and it sits in your neighbor's swales and backyards. That's where the mosquitoes breed. Regarding your last point, which was light pollution, sound pollution, and wildlife, these are things that everybody is concerned about. And there are ordinances put in place to prevent light pollution. For example, they require shielding on any outdoor lighting. Regarding wildlife, if you look at that aerial back of 1940 of our property, you'll also notice the property all around it was heavily wooded. It no longer is heavily wooded. There's roads, there's homes, and so there's a trade-off, a back and forth, where it's not just your property that could get developed into a home. Everybody has property rights. And so as communities mature, they start to write ordinances that restrict the ways in which we can develop properties. We are meeting all of those ordinances and trying to do it in a way that is sustainable and benefits the community and meet its master plan goals. And so while I do have 2 families of squirrels living in my trees, I think they're great. I love to see them there. I've got skunks running through my backyard all the time. The deer will find where they're gonna go. They're gonna find the open spaces, the preserved areas, the wetlands, the woodlands. We're doing our part to preserve those. We've got a huge amount of open space in our development, more than is required under the straight zoning. And so I think that we are doing our part as good stewards of this property to develop it in a responsible manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, please.
Rather than spraying, you also have bats and martins and other birds that control the mosquitoes, and mosquitoes don't travel that far.
Next person.
Excuse me. Do I say my name and address?
Pardon me?
No.
Do I say my name and address?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Jennifer Mace, I'm from 919 Bluffton. But I own property on Leon, so it's kind of, okay, I have a couple, I mostly just have comments. So I'm asking about the trees. Just so some statistics, I found one large tree can lift up 100 gallons of water out of the ground in a day. This is from North Carolina State University. So all these trees that they're cutting down, that also takes water. So that's going to increase your water in your pond, correct?
Yes.
So I'm just asking you to not give them the tree exemption. I'd like to see the trees planted other way. I mean, Riley Park could use some trees, the beach can use some trees, around here you could use some nice mature trees. I think that they should either pay for it, or this is what's gonna improve the city. This is what's best for the city. So I would like them to either, they have 600 trees, that's a lot of trees. The other question is the 2 lots on Leon. Are they do they have deeded access for the lake? Because they are gonna sell those at some point. So is it in the deed? Do they have lake access? I understood it was an issue before, but I don't know what the final. And then also, I read in the study, it said that there was going to be no traffic impact on Leon. And that is, I mean, there's no way that you're not gonna have any traffic impact. To go to Wixom, everybody uses that Leon to go to Wixom, to go to the beach downtown. They're gonna be using that. So whoever wrote that is, you know, they don't live around here, or I'm not sure. So, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. With respect to tree preservation, we are saving 174 regular trees and permanently preserving 64 existing landmark trees on the site, as well as planting the 309 additional trees. The second reading of the vegetation ordinance, which I mentioned earlier, would bring this very close to a wash under that ordinance. The exemption that you mentioned was underneath the old ordinance, should that not be passed tonight. Regarding lake access, to answer your question directly, the 36 units within the PUD have relinquished lake access. So 36 units will not have lake access. The 2 out parcels, which are being split off and are not part of this, will still have whatever lake access goes with folks on Leon Road. So those 2 lots, to answer your question, yes, they could still have lake access, but the 36 within this development that we're considering tonight do not. Regarding traffic impact is a science. They go and they count cars, they count trips, they do studies of what we're proposing to build. They figure what types of trips those folks will have during rush hours and non-peak hours. And they take a look at the traffic patterns around the area, and they decide if additional improvements are warranted because of this development. It's a science. They have come up with the answer that says, based on the accepted traffic analysis, that this will not have an impact, a negative impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person. Yes,
Hello, my name is Lisa Stefan. I live at 209 Sheraton, which is right in the area of Leon where the development's gonna go. My question is about the setbacks that were priorly brought up. And how are those front and rear setbacks going to be, and how transparent is Pulte going to be with the potential homeowners that purchase these properties? Because in my experience with different builders, and I'm just gonna speak to Pulte because that's who we're talking about, They maximize the lot, and I think everybody that potentially may be purchasing these homes should know that they maximize the lot, and they're not forthcoming with, if you wanna put a deck on the back of your house, oh, guess what? You don't meet the setbacks, there's not enough room. And I'm really curious on how you guys plan on handling that, and if that's something that you're gonna let the people know. That, by the way, if you buy this house, you don't have room for that deck that you wanna put, or that pool that you might wanna put in to entertain your family. So I'd like to have an answer to that.
Thank you for your question. The setbacks are set in the approved plans, the approved engineering plans, and also in the exhibit Bs. So in this case, the front setbacks, I believe in this site are 25 feet. I'd have to refer to the plans. Rear setbacks, I believe, are 30 or 35, and the side was mentioned at 10. So those setbacks are legally set on the plans. The building department reviews every single plan that we submit to make sure that it's within the setbacks. Regarding transparencies, there's a thing called a condominium document that gets recorded with the state and is included with every purchase package when a homeowner comes to buy a lot. It describes their lot legally. It gives the setbacks, it shows the boundaries, it shows the size, and so that exhibit B is part of the documentation that defines it as a legal document. Give it to every homeowner, recorded with the state, approved by the local municipality. So there are multiple ways that a person can do their due diligence to ensure that the deck of their dreams can be built on their house or not. And those are questions that the sales folks are well versed in. In some cases where there are issues with decks because there are unusual building envelopes, those customers can have us run different design scenarios before they purchase so they can understand exactly what they can do. In the case where there was no deck that was able to be built, those would be disclosures. We have legal disclosures in our purchase agreement where we disclose issues that might be a problem. For example, there was a legal disclosure in Steeplechase of Northville that was, you live 1 mile from a dump, okay? And that's in the purchase agreement. So I wonder how many individual houses that are resales have those types of protections compared to new home sales. You're not required to get your condominium documents when you buy an existing home. You don't have those folks in the sales office and the operations office to help you through to answer those questions. You're on your own to do your due diligence. In a case where you buy a new home, you have these additional things that are put in place by your local and state government to ensure that you understand exactly what you're buying. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on this development have a question?
I'm Ellen Boylan at 761 East Wall Lake.
Can you pull that mic down so I can...
And I want to thank the council for allowing us to come and speak because I think this is really important for all of us. I don't live on Leon or that close, but I sympathize with the people who are on Sparks and close to this area. One of the things that is saying, it's very easy for a salesperson to come up here and say, oh, everything's going to be told to these people, but East Bay, they didn't know that they didn't have lake rights. The subdivision with beautiful homes over in Novi on the west side of the lake, they didn't know that they didn't have lake rights, and they bought these very expensive homes. My main concern is the wildlife. I'm not a fan of zoos, and when I see my grandchildren look at a wild animal, it's amazing. And I feel very bad that we're putting dollar value so that we can have something ahead of this opportunity for our children and their children to see the wildlife. It's not the same when deer are going to be clustered in this one little area. We need to keep giving them a spot to live. Deer, fox, whatever else was mentioned. I just feel really bad if this goes through. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else?
John Hennahan, 1545 Leon Road, Walled Lake, Michigan. Robert, Gabriel, Casey, Linda, John, Bennett, and Tamara, who's not here. This is our city. We've come forth as a group over several meetings. The group of this city is not in favor of this plan. I get you guys see dollar signs. I think you guys are clueless. Tell me which one of you knows which particular property on this property has had a recent weather event that has caused destruction to one of the properties on this site. Can anybody tell me who's had that? Can you guys tell me about your community that you live in? Do you want the man here who says, hey, we're going by the master plan, although the master plan doesn't call for anything close to what this particular development is. You guys are like, man, this is great. It's gonna solve all our water problems, all the screw ups we had down in East Bay, and we got all the water down here. We're gonna have this retention plan. It's gonna go great. Everything's gonna be just a beautiful thing. But you guys don't even know which property here in the city of Walled Lake, where we all live, has caused significant damage to one of the properties on this development. Even Mr. Developer here, well, I don't even know your name because you came in kind of as a ringer like the baseball teams do, and they bring in the home run hitter because the first guy just wasn't selling the project very well. And so, hey, it's your turn to say, hey, let's get city council. Let's let Linda sit here on her phone, and at the end of the meeting, she's exchanging business cards, which there might not be anything wrong with that, but that's what she's doing. This is our city. This is the city of Walled Lake. And this community does not want this development. And 3 of you are up for re-election. And don't think we don't know who those 3 people are. And I get you want our city to be great. And I want our city to be great. That's why I've lived here for 30 years. And we want our wildlife, and we want our, not in my backyard too, and I get people have the rights to develop properties. But this property is being developed for all the wrong reasons and shifting everything to the side. We say, oh, the master plan. What is the master plan? We looked at the master plan. The master plan says, let's make this into a community park. The village, Walled Lake has 6 distinct properties, areas, neighborhoods. The neighborhood of East Walled Lake, or East Downtown, we don't have a city park. This would be the perfect place to keep it. We can do that. We can still do that now. You guys don't have to vote today to approve this. When I say you're clueless, when I brought up what I brought up, you don't know what's going on in your own neighborhood. You don't know what kind of properties, when he talks about a 100-year storm, and we got a lot of farmers throughout the country who haven't planted their crops this year because there was too much water. And he says, oh, the water, we'll be able to handle it. We'll just handle it, send it down to Donna's property. If you don't know who Donna's property is, you haven't lived here. Donna's been part of this community for a long time. Okay? So you guys gotta realize.
You want to start winding up, please?
Sure, I'll wind it up, Linda. I'd be happy to. Do you need to check your phone for anything?
Sure, I will tell you.
Okay, all right, that's fine. My time is up. I think I made my point. This guy, they're not on our side.
Okay, and I'm going to answer your question, sir. When I sat over there that night and came to the meeting, what I was doing on my phone was adjusting this little piece of equipment here. And I'm sorry that because of my hearing, I had to do it and it upset you. I've adjusted it 4 times tonight.
It didn't seem like you were paying attention. We can all say why we're on our phone, so that's,
Well,
regardless. We all use our phones. People don't like the
Okay,
phones.
I told you why. I don't need
That's
any
fine.
more. Is there anyone else that would like to? Come on, sir. No, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Wilson.
Neil Wilson, 565 Woodland, I don't live in the Tri-County area. I live over at Wynwood. But I have a few questions. I know that the DDA, and it's related to this, so I just want to bring at it for a second. They are giving some money to fix the Decker Road, and for, I think it's next year or something like that. But I understand a lot of roads in the Tri-area are in disrepair, and I'm curious why over a period of time that it seems like it hasn't been addressed by the city council. I don't know if that's on the works or whatnot. Same thing involved with the same thing with I know there was a disagreement with Dave and some of the other city council members about the DDA using funds to fix Decker. That, they said, is a gateway road, and it makes sense because people to get downtown makes sense to go Decker to Walled Lake Road to get there. The Leon and some of the other side roads are not necessarily gateway roads. However, the issue is they still haven't addressed the repairs of the roads within the Tri-County area. I believe those are public roads, they're not private roads. I'm curious, will the road be public or private? I think they're public in Beechwood. Private. Private? Yes. Okay, so the city, I wasn't sure of that. Good, okay. So the condominium association has to take care of that. The next thing, we've got a Class A school system here. Project, if you know, it's across Decker, they're building some other condos or apartments or something like that. With a project like that, I noticed in Wynwood, our condo's been selling at a good rate, at a good price. These condos are not gonna be cheap. That's gonna bring in a lot of money. If they don't do this condo, how is the water problem going to be resolved and who's gonna pay for it? Now, I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, because the people here have a good reason why they don't like it. But I see good positive things for this. Number one, it's a lot of taxes for the city to take care maybe of some of the roads, the private roads, to take care of other things. It costs money to run a city. We've got a Class A school system that's gonna bring in families with more kids, that'll bring in more money. So you gotta look at a little bit to the future too. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hello, I'm only looking at my phone, these are where my notes are. And I apologize because I'm terrible at these public speaking events. My name is Scott Toth, I'm from 455 Sparks Lane, and we also recently purchased a property at 800 Leon. So as mentioned just a minute ago, a lot of these things seem like they might, have some added benefit to the area, but there's a lot of questions that I have, or items that should be definitely pointed out. So the 156,000 cubic feet volume that's now being proposed, I do want to note, it actually said 56,000 in the presentation, which is way lower. But that is 60% of what was in the initial proposal that was submitted on June 2018, which had over 200,000 cubic feet storage capacities. At that time, it was brought up a lot of the flooding issues that were occurring spring of 2018. I think you saw me at a few of these council meetings with some very wet boots after trampling through my backyard. At that point, they switched over to a detention plant basin that was going to retain even more water than the 200,000+ gallons, cubic feet, 264,000 cubic feet. Now it's 60% smaller when it's coming to this city council for approval, and it might even be just 21% of that size if it's really 56,000 and not 156,000. So that's critical. I mean, already we're looking at a smaller basin that was initially deemed an issue, so much so that when the plans were redeveloped to reduce the number of homes, a whole plan for a detention pond went into place. Soil samples were collected, analyses were performed, and that cost a lot of money. So if before 100,000 cubic feet wasn't enough, Why is only 156,000 enough now? Second, I do want to point out that the water drainage pad in the 126 acre area that was pointed out with red arrows that goes through by Sparks Lane and across through East Bay does not at all reflect reality. East Bay's their own retention basin has berms that block any water from flowing across and down through towards the wetland area over there, which was also an issue. I also question that the plans account for multiple 100-year rain events, which can happen multiple times in a single year, just like 2018. And I also question whether or not the wetland area downstream of this retention plan can handle multiple 100-year events in one season within 3 days. In 2018 during the spring, I've got a few more items here and I apologize, but in 2018 in the spring we had multiple 100-year event rains and the ground was frozen, tons of water, right? Lots of issues. I'm going to try to wrap this up about as quickly as I can. So I also want to point out that during the last election, all council members that were running indicated in interviews that stormwater discharge into the lake was very important to them. This seems to go against that as we're just discharging more water right into the lake, stormwater. The PUD tree line buffers were a critical issue. Mr. Schaefer indicated that these would not be a problem. Now they want to have a waiver to plant 63% fewer trees than what's the bare minimum of our ordinance, which I think is ridiculous. Who's responsible for inspecting the retention basin on a regular basis? It's hidden in the back of the development, you can't see it. The only time that somebody is going to notify anybody about a problem is when there is one. There's no preventative maintenance in these situations. Just look at East Bay. And it took people how many years of complaining of their retention issues before action was taken? According to Kim in the Tri-A area, 6-7 years. Decker Road reconstruction, we all know this needs to happen. It's a great thing when it does. Please make sure that you redo that road after the development is complete, because those 18-wheelers will destroy everything that you've done. Just throwing it out there. Outlots with lake access, hate that idea. There's already too many boats on Leon. Let's call it what it is. I would much rather see some green space, maybe with a few trees to soak up some more water. As mentioned, a good weeping willow can pull up 600 gallons of water a day. So that's huge. And I do want to call out that at least a portion of the traffic study was performed during spring break when many schools were closed and people were on vacation. As somebody that works in data analysis, I find that to be a critical fielding mistake.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I won't just address your statements, I'll just address the questions that were within that. This is a great country, I'm glad everybody gets to express their opinions. There are 156,000 cubic feet in the basin, not 56,000 cubic feet. The difference between a detention basin and a retention basin has to do with that volume difference. If you don't have an outlet, the county drainage requirements and local drainage requirements require that you be able to store back-to-back 100-year events because you don't have an outlet. It's got to give it time to percolate down. In this case, when there is a detention basin where we're detaining the water, we are pumping it out, as I said, over 4 days. So the storm surge doesn't happen over a matter of hours. It gets trickled out over a matter of days. And so you could have about 100-year events, as long as they weren't within 4 days of each other, then they would constantly be pumped down at the same rate that we talked about, that 1/4 inch into the wetland rate. So I just wanted to address some of those math clarifications. Also, one last point about Walled Lake is that Walled Lake is fed only by springs and stormwater discharge. It's the only source of water for the lake. So when the lake drops down below the weir level, the only way for that lake to get back up, when we all have issues with Walled Lake is so low, It needs the stormwater, and this stormwater is cleaned, filtered, stored through best management practices, and that's how our stormwater management is designed. Thank you.
So just to clarify, the 264,113 cubic feet that I stated was the initial retention basin size when draining down to Leon was in the original plan from June of 2018. Not the detention that was proposed at a later date. So now we're 60% smaller.
The 156,000 cubic feet that are currently in the stormwater basin meets all of the city and county requirements for a stormwater basin of this size. The reason that it was twice as large at one point is because it doesn't have an outlet. The basin's been reviewed by professional engineers and professional review consultants on behalf of the city. Our numbers are correct.
Before I ask you, when it was the larger amount, that was when it was a different type of.
That's correct.
And the water was going to go down into the ground rather than to be pumped out into the drainage and on down to the lake.
That's correct. It was going to be a retention, retaining the water and letting it perk into the ground. And that was the preliminary approval. The preliminary approval came before Planning Commission and City Council, and that was the design. Our firm, Diffin Umlor Engineers, picked it up after the preliminary approval. We went and the outside consultants did the soil borings, and we found that it wasn't sustainable. It was going to get plugged up and wasn't going to work. So we redesigned it as a detention basin with the appropriate sizes required by all of the drainage restrictions. In addition, it's larger. The basin is larger than the 10-acre property that we're talking about. There's a 20-acre drainage area that drains to this basin. We are not obligated by any of the stormwater management criteria to design the basin to take all 20 acres. We could do diversion swales around the perimeter of our property and allow the adjacent runoff water to continue to run on down to Sparks Lane and down to Gamma and down to Omega and flood those backyards, and next to East Bay where, yeah, they've got a detention basin, but if you go look at the rear yard storm, they're full up to the rims with water because it's not draining well. So we're removing that water out of that drainage area and redirecting it through a controlled manner through another route that's been reviewed by professional engineers and permitted that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have
Okay,
a PUD
is there anyone else on this development?
It did include a drain.
Yeah.
Christy Brown Ambrose, 440 East Wall Lake Drive. I'd just like to caution the council on the area that they're gonna be draining all this water down to. I know they're gonna be doing it in a slow process, but that area on Leon, East Wall Lake Drive, Arvita, that wetland area is pretty full. I don't know how it's gonna get from that point to the lake. Should there be some type of pump or something done to that wetland area to ensure that that water doesn't flood out those people? Thank you.
That's for the increasing the size of the outlet, am I correct?
Yes, there is a 15-inch pipe that runs from that wetland out to Walled Lake that is owned by Oakland County Water Resources. That's the one that had unauthorized restrictions added to the pipe, which are going to be removed by WRC. There is an outlet for that wetland to the lake. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anybody else on this development? Yes.
Okay, my name's Manny Heinhan, 1545 Leon, Walled Lake, Michigan. I'm his daughter, so I'm gonna start off from some points from his snazzy presentation. So he said he's solving a community problem. He's obviously not. Literally at the Planning Commission, there were 3 people who said they were physically going to move if you guys put that through. How does that solve a community problem if people are gonna move? Don't you want people to come and love and live this city? I used to, now I don't anymore. That's so sad to me, first point. Second of all, this does not follow the master plan. My dad actually read word for word the master plan when this came out. Have you guys all read the master plan? Because this does not follow the master plan. I stayed up while he read this all night. This doesn't even remotely follow the master plan. He's got it over there, and there's like 30 points in there that this doesn't even hit. Yeah, sure, maybe it hits some. It does not hit a lot of them. Next, he said that this plan is substantially unchanged. Well, you didn't approve it last year. Why are you going to approve it now if it's substantially unchanged? And there were so many issues last year. So he wants to put this line into Leon for the ditch. Well, I currently live next to, we call it Lake Gary. Okay, it is huge and there is so much water. It is only going to get worse. And this is like, you guys said all the same stuff with Beechwood at the end. Oh, it's going to be perfect. It's going to be this, because there was probably another snazzy presentation that everybody was so wowed by, because we all get 3 minutes while he gets a snazzy presentation. And look, it's disgusting down there. I go on walks every night and there are like tires in there. Who really maintains that? The HOA, but do they really? No, because it's disgusting. No one takes care of this. The quality of life, it's gonna be horrible. Like, there are gonna be people in my backyard. I wanna see turkeys, not someone in their backyard. That's not what I want. I don't live in Novi, I live in Walled Lake. Okay, there's no wildlife. I want the turkeys. Like I said, I don't want people in my backyard. The traffic now sucks. This road study was not what it was supposed to be. What about this road? I'm curious where this road's gonna go. Is it really gonna be an emergency road? Like, who's gonna be using it? It's gonna create more traffic. No one's talked about this road yet. We know what's gonna happen. Why hasn't this road been brought up? I get that he doesn't care about the extra mosquitoes. There's already some. It's gonna create more. It's gonna create a bigger problem. And I get that there's gonna be nothing done, but it's gonna create a worse problem. Okay, trees are important and they help the water. He's replacing some, but at the bare minimum. Do we really wanna be a community that does the bare minimum? No, we wanna be known to be a great community, not a community that does the bare minimum. That's pretty sad to me. But why do I mention this? Why? Are you even listening to me? Well, you should, because I'm a voter and I'm voting for you guys. You guys are up for re-election. I walk this community. I talk to people. I talk to some of you guys. And I'm going to make sure that I'm voting for the people that make my community better and want to vote for me. And I'm going to make sure that I'm speaking to my community and making it known that I'm voting for the people who care for me and listen to me. Not the people who listen to him, who lives in Plymouth, who literally said he doesn't care about the deer. They can, quote, I'm sorry, I'm almost done. Go somewhere else. He lives in Plymouth and doesn't care about us. He doesn't live in Walled Lake. I do. These people do. They live in Walled Lake, okay? And it's just really upsetting to me. My last point is, you didn't even care to ask about the home that was damaged in the community. Do you know it's his home? It's the home next door to me. A big tree fell on it and you didn't even care to ask. And that's really sad to me.
Just one comment for the new item, which is the emergency access is going to be gated with the fire department lock boxes on it, so it won't be open to regular traffic.
People are still using it.
How are you gonna sell that then as a home, as a property?
Okay, is there anyone else on this topic? Is there anyone else?
Hello, my name is Sylvia Toth and I live on 455 Sparks Lane. I just want to address a couple of issues that have already been discussed by a lot of the present citizens. But the one thing that kind of strikes me, as Scott pointed out earlier, there's a good chunk of discrepancies by what was adjusted the original POD by Mr. Schaefer last year, and what we're working with by the gentleman this year. Some of the issues, like Scott mentioned, is the retention basin. He literally just pulled out the PUD and meeting minutes, and it does show retention basin and drainages. And the gentleman just said that was not the case. Well, you know, we got a picture of it, so indeed it is the case. And also the drainage. Last year, remember, Mr. Schaefer was talking in one of the many meetings we attended, and claimed that the draining has been checked, been reviewed, it's gonna work, it's approved the way that it should be. And of course, now we come up with a new drainage, which may or may not be better. The point that I'm trying to make is there's discrepancies, there's reason to question whether or not everything is in line. There's reason to doubt whether we're gonna walk into another East Bay situation, better or worse than East Bay. And as us people living here and intend to live here for 30 years, hopefully like John, that's something that we're concerned about. And I mean, I don't need to tell you guys about Sparks, you know what situation we live in, you know we're experiencing issues from East Bay literally every single day. And now they're gonna be on the other side of us, so we're gonna be kinda in the middle of, I don't know, rock and a hard place. So, do we like the idea? Absolutely not. And back to the mosquito problems, there's, by the way, things you can do for mosquitoes. We started paying this year a good chunk of change to have our yard treated because East Bay is absolutely not only flooding us with actual water, but also with mosquitoes because that low-bay retention pond that they have, and the other one that you're gonna put on the other side of us is creating a nightmare where we cannot go out, let alone our newborn daughter. So there is stuff that you can do, but it's very, very expensive. This being said, the traffic issues on Leon, like Scott said, that was not a good timing to do the traffic study. And traffic studies are a science. Yes, that is absolutely correct. However, it doesn't take much common sense to figure out that if you add 38 new homes times at the very minimum 2 vehicles, that is going to create a traffic problem. And with all my respect, it's a disaster right now, not only on Decker, but on Leon. Trying to walk on that road, it's a hazardous situation. I'm surprised we haven't had somebody killed and murdered. We are terrified to walk our 5-month-old child because nobody cares. People are flying down that road. My mother-in-law walks with cones so she can hit cars because they truly don't care that we have a stroller, not just being adults. And it is absolutely ridiculous. I love the Walled Lake Police Department, but that's an area that could be monitored a little bit more. I apologize, I'm almost done. Then also the situation with the trees. It also doesn't make sense to me just to think from the perspective how many gallons of water one tree can consume per day, that if we remove all the trees that are proposed to be removed, then the exemption to not plant the required, well, I guess not the required, but to replace all of the trees, the construction, the cement is gonna go in there, that's not gonna help with the drainage. So to me, that part doesn't make sense, and the retention part already, that was a complete failure in East Bay. Doesn't give me any comfort that this will be any better, despite the reviewers, and also the people that are reviewing and they have approved those plans, are they the same ones from East Bay? And I apologize to keep going back and forth to East Bay, but that was a major mistake that we now recognize that's impacting all of us. We can't do anything about it, so I really don't want to run into the second one in the city that are literally, 200 yards away from each other. And last but not least, what would we do about this project if we run into a situation, just like in East Bay, where we have a whole bunch of buildings and property that's undeveloped, that it's sitting as a safety hazard out there with just their basements created. So what if we run into an economical downturn that's actually, expected to hit the United States, not just Michigan, and it's gonna hit us harder than other states as we've already experienced.
Let's wind down, okay?
Sure, yeah, no, I'm sorry, but what would that happen, and let's say out of those 38 homes, for example, 20% of them doesn't get developed, and now all of a sudden we're missing the trees, we're missing the wildlife, and we have a whole bunch of property potentially, again, create hazard for others. Just stop, thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else?
Michelle Cunningham, 1545 Leon. You guys showed a slide and you said the red areas, which is where I live, drain down on their own. They don't drain. We call it lake area on this side, and in my backyard, it is totally flooded, and we got ducks. They're really nice, they come back each year, but they come back because our yard is always flooded and always their home. And so I don't know how your drainage thing is gonna address that, but ours really doesn't drain, like he says, they drain, they're still flooded. And truthfully, in my eyes, I see this still is only a gamble. If you wanna take that gamble.
I couldn't hear you, I'm sorry.
This water retention pond you think might solve the problem, it's only a gamble. It may not. That's what I say.
I'm sorry. Okay. Is there somebody else? Yes.
If I talk about this, I got something else to bring up later. I can do that still, right?
Pardon me?
I have two questions, but only one pertains to this right now.
Okay, well then ask that question now.
Okay. What does Walled Lake have to, oh, sorry, my name is Michael Johnson. I live on 1269 Delta Road, which is now gravel, by the way. Does Walled Lake have to put any money into this? Are we putting any money into this? Or is Pulte
that I'm aware
forking
of.
all of it? For everything?
Wall Lake's not putting
No,
any
we're not
money in.
putting
Okay, that's, I just want to
No,
know.
this is a proposal that we, as a matter of law, have to listen to.
Right, but it won't cost us anything.
The city's not contributing any money to any development or anything that's going there. They're proposing to do some improvements that may or may not, depending on which side of the issue you're on, improve the city and save the city money. That's a debatable issue, that's what's going on today. The city is contributing no money to that development
Okay,
whatsoever.
or to the drainage or any of that.
None of that. If it passes, or if there's improvements that happen, then the city may follow through and try to improve things. We try to piggyback on projects and improve what they're doing, but there's no connection. I do not know this man, I've met him once, the folks
No,
here.
I'm just asking if we are actually
No, we're
putting money
not,
for it.
this is
when
an
this gets going.
independent project that came up. Planning commission's required as a matter of law to listen. Staff is required to push it forward until it's voted up or voted down.
Okay, and if it's voted up, all right, it's voted through, yay,
There's
nay,
still no,
sorry, aye.
the city, you know, I run the city administration, and there's no commitment of any finances to that project whatsoever.
Okay, but there could be, right?
Never.
That's where I'm trying to get to. There could be.
No, I mean, no, that's not what's, you know.
That's what you just said.
No, I said if something happens in development, my job is to maximize any improvements. For
Right, so you
instance,
So you said you could piggyback on
That-
theirs.
That's not what I meant to say. If it came out that way, then I apologize. If there's improvements in other parts of the city, like for instance, they say they're gonna do something downstream. Well, that's not in their project, but if we go downstream, and that's what we've been trying to do, not only in Tri-A, but the other areas over on Sparks Lane, we've been trying to improve that for several years now, went for 50 years. So anytime there's an improvement, we're going to look and see what we can do to improve the whole area, not his project.
Okay.
There'll be no commitment to his project. One of the things that came up tonight is particularly important, that shouldn't be missed since we're talking about it, and I don't know how that fits. It wasn't asked, nobody asked why the seawall ended up restricting that. I don't know the answer to that, and I've been here 9 years. But that's causing a lot of the problem, and somebody locally did that. We don't know why, but if it turns out that that improvement actually drains that in a better way, then we have to look at it and have our engineers look at it. That's not a commitment to his project.
No, what I'm
It's
trying
a
to.
commitment to your
Okay.
life.
What I'm trying to find out, what I wanna know, all of the retention pond, the drainage down Leon, which is not the property they're talking about, all that drainage where they said in the thing, that dig out the ditches, do the culverts and all that, who is paying for that?
Not the city.
Pulte is? Yes. Okay, that's what I wanna know.
That the city will make sure that if that happened, the city would participate by way of making sure it's done correctly. 'Cause we have to monitor that and inspect it. But the city has made no commitment. We have no connection to Pulte. Pulte's an independent
Right, I
body.
understand that. I just
And
wanna
so there's
know.
no commitment. If they do that, the city still has to approve that work.
Right, I
So
wanted to know
they gotta
who was
get
paying
permits.
for them.
No money committed, no money, no agenda, it's completely transparent. We don't know these people, I don't know them.
No, I'm not saying that, I just wanted to know.
No hidden money, don't let anybody convince you that.
I'm not talking about hidden money.
Okay, gotcha. That was a long meeting. Is there anyone else?
Can the city attorney confirm that what he just said was true, that you won't have city employees inspect the work, that they're gonna put in the work according to what they said they were gonna do, and there'll be no cost to the city? That seems unrealistic. Can you confirm that?
There's no financial commitment by the city to the development of the project. There are permits that will have to be pulled, as there are every time somebody does any kind of improvement to the property or the building. And then there are always going to be inspections on those permits that will be performed by the building official or the engineer, as it may be. They are going to be paying for the city's consultant costs and fees. So, for example, if there's costs that are incurred by the city for work that's done by the city consultants, the engineer, the planner, so on and so forth, they're gonna pay for that.
Thank you for the clarification. Is there anyone else? No, we're not going,
That's one
we're
more
not going,
question.
no, we're not going second.
No, we don't wanna
time
hear the
around.
city, we don't wanna hear the people.
There's people who haven't had a chance to speak. Is there anyone else who wants to speak on this development? Is there anyone else on the development? Okay. Is there anyone else?
Hackley?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I have
didn't
a
see your
quick
hand.
question. How many total trees were there?
Would you please speak up to the, walk up to the mic?
Sure.
And give your name and address?
My name is Kyler Pilnick at 1428 North Pontiac Trail. How many total trees are there before any construction is done to the property? And how many total trees will remain? Do you have any sort of plan to bring that total number of trees throughout the city, spread it through at parks, like one lady said earlier beforehand, or down at beaches, or even through other subdivisions or neighborhoods?
Bear with me, I have the answer here. I believe it's 1,029, but let me look it up. It might be another one of my projects.
And I should add, if you have any future plan of relocating or planting the trees that exist, because you did state that some of which were invasive species or which had diseases, which obviously I'm sure many of us would not want spread around throughout the community.
The tree survey indicates that there are 1,029 trees that are 5 inches diameter breast height and larger, which is the requirement to survey the property. We are removing 121 trees from that count that are exempt from the tree protection ordinance because they're dead or there's a problem with those trees. So there's 907 trees that are subject to the ordinance. We are saving 242 trees and are removing 665 trees. Of the 665 trees, 46 are landmark, and per the existing ordinance, 695 replacement trees are required. That ordinance is up for consideration today to be modified, which would not require that level. The reason that it's modified is because it produces an undue burden on properties, and so your city has looked at other cities' ordinances like Novi and Canton to see what type of exemptions they have so that they can still preserve natural features, but also encourage development that's consistent with the goals stated in their master plan. We are planting 309 new trees. We are not planting any trees off property, if that answers your question.
So just to build on top of that, how many total trees will exist or be total planted after the project is completed?
440 is what they're asking.
So that would be the removal of 40.
Like 600 and some trees.
Thank you.
More than half.
Okay. Is there anyone else on this development?
Susan Helke, 1361 Shaw. So, if I'm getting this straight, the problem with the flooding in the Tri-A area, which has been going on for years, you're claiming will be fixed by adding 36 more buildings. Removing trees, paving driveways, paving streets, and you claim that this will be a good thing in the Tri-A area. I wasn't here when East Bay was built, but I understand that many promises were made then too. Promises from engineers in the state, and they all turned out to be wrong, but now it's too late. We can't do anything about it. How will you make them keep their promises if it turns out that these plans don't work after all? One of my husband's favorite sayings is, water always wins. Water's gonna do what it wants to do, no matter how many plans there are, no matter how many engineering studies there are, as the Tri-A people can testify. They have lots and lots of pictures and lots of ducks. And I would really like the point about the new home purchaser having an advantage to building the decks with everything being spelled out for them. But to me, that only means that the second purchaser in line is the one that's gonna get screwed. Because they're not gonna have it spelled out for them. By then it'll be too late. The last point that I really liked was you're gonna make your plans based on Novi and Canton. Take a look at Novi and Canton. They're a nightmare. We don't want to live in Novi and Canton. We want to live in Walled Lake. But we'd like to have some of these problems fixed, and we'd like to have our values defended.
Say on that first statement that you made, as I've said here all night, and I don't think anybody said that the problems in Tri-A were going to be solved. I think the gentleman said it would help the drainage. I don't remember the word solved being stated, but I might be wrong. Okay, is there anybody else on the development? Yes.
Jeff Rondo, 1159 Wabasso. I worked here when East Bay Development was being developed. What generally happens is these guys come in and develop it. They do it as close as they can. When it's close to the end, they wash their hands of it and give it to the property owners. So whatever problems there are going to be that he leaves are going to be in the hands of the property owners. So we need to watch this close. As far as Tri-A sub is concerned, the roads are shot because nobody's cleaned a ditch in 40 years. I don't understand how nobody sees that. When the ditch is filled with water, they get under the road and they freeze. If we'd have been cleaning those ditches 30, 40 years ago, we wouldn't have this problem. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else on this development? No? Okay, let's move on to any other audience participation that you have. Yes, lady in the front.
Darlene Ciampa, 1717 Ashland, Walled Lake. I would like a clarification of last month's minutes. The minutes commented that I made a personal attack on city council, and so I did what everybody does, and I went on to the internet to look up the definition. And definition of personal attack is making an abusive remark on or relating to one person instead of providing evidence when examining another person's claims or comments. I did not make any personal attacks, and I would ask that the city council examine their own behavior when they are talking to Gabe Costanzo and how they are treating him, rather than the factually based letter that I wrote and submitted in last month's minutes. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Yes, the gentleman in the back.
Sorry, I gotta do my second here. Mike Johnson again, 1269 Delta Road, in the Tri-A sub. Nobody is, I haven't heard anything about the millage or a way to pay for our roads and our drain system at all. Heard all about the Pulte thing. But I haven't heard anything about fixing the stuff that already is existing. The second part about that is right now we're putting in those fantastic new drain lines in, and who's going to fix my Delta Road now? You have huge loaders going through there at 30 miles an hour. I chased one today, tearing up that road. The excavators with the tracks turning, dragging, and everything else. That road was already crap, and it's now gravel. My road is freaking gravel. all of that. And then you've got, people don't go through there to cut the corner because it's like, there's 2 signs that say not to do it. And I've counted 25 people that don't live there, stopping, turning around, and going the other way, because the road just got too darn bad. And the other fact is you've got this company coming in here and digging these ditches, digging these holes in my front yard, which they rolled into and crushed my drainage ditch. It's crushed. And it's filled up. And so it rained today. Not a 100-year rain, it was just like a 45-year rain. And it now is flooding out my yard again. So we've now compounded the problem. Who's gonna fix it? Is the company gonna fix it? They're gonna fix that road that they just annihilated today? They did, they destroyed it today, I watched them do it. The road is just absolutely wrecked. And we didn't wanna fix it before, and we didn't have the money to fix it, this, that, and the other thing. It needs to be fixed now. It's not even safe for a bus to go on it. I drive a PT Cruiser, I bottom out going through it. The 2 questions is there gonna be a millage, and when? Or how are we gonna pay for it? To get our drainage and our roads fixed, which we talked about before. Everybody was all, yeah, let's go, and then we didn't hear anything. And the other part is this company, or who's held responsible for the damage this company's doing, which is destroying Gamma and Delta all the way around there with that front loader and the tracks going back and forth and tearing it all up. Roads that were never meant to haul that kind of a load. That's it, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Dan Laufer, 1488 Dover Hill North. My first comment is I wish to thank Gabriel Costanzo for his undying efforts to get the trail done. I'm so glad that it's getting done. Thank you for that. I have a question. Just over a year ago, a committee was formed to investigate the Banks house. We haven't heard anything since then. Will we be receiving reports? Is it up for sale? Is it going to be rehabbed? How long do we have to wait? Since 1997? And it still sits there. So, can we have a report? Who was I've forgotten, I think it was Mr. Ambrose who suggested that idea over a year ago. You did? I don't know. We haven't heard anything. But thank you, that's all I have to say.
Is there anyone else? Yes.
Hi, I'm Karen Colke, 179 Spring Park, and I just have a question in regards to the police and the fire, the millage that we're renewing or something.
Yes.
Right in that election next month. Is there some way between the 3, the city, the police and fire, if they could change the date so that it would be closer to an election or wouldn't expire before an election and save us the $6,000 that it costs for that election? I don't know anything about the politics or anything, but it just seems like with cooperation, maybe extend the contract a couple months so that there is a regular general election being held and it can be put on the ballot at that time instead of having a special election 2 months before or 3 months before the regular election. Thank you.
Good point.
Hello, I'm Rick Greenwell, 395 West Wall Lake Drive. I just got to make a comment right up front. The recent photo of the 2020 and 21 finance report showing 5 of the 6 council members and the mayor. I'm sorry, that's a clear case of blatant bias. I'm sorry, you guys could have done better. Maybe there's a reason why, I don't know. If there is, I'd like to know. Anyways, my concern today is a seemingly lack of interest into the reckless behavior of our city manager. His use of racially charged comments and statements at a council meeting, and while sworn in at a deposition for a lawsuit that landed Wall Lake in yet another lawsuit for Mr. Witt's actions. The city manager works at the pleasure of the city council. This council permanently removed one of their own for calling somebody a name. There's a considerable difference between calling, between name calling and repeatedly using racially charged slurs. A sworn officer of the city who sits in the highest seat should be held to the highest degree of moral standards. In fact, the city manager should, of course, be setting the bar as to where the city draws the line for acceptable behavior. An employee who has crossed this line by way of making racially charged comments and statements should have been immediately put on administrative leave without pay, pending the outcome of the lawsuit. That's just my opinion. These are not just simple allegations. Mayor Ackley, you, the city attorney, and others were in the same room with Mr. Witt during his sworn testimony where he made these racially charged comments. All this information is public knowledge and available through Open County. My hopes are that Wall Lake will escape any harm as a result of these lawsuits. My best guess tells me it doesn't look promising, especially after reading all the information in the lawsuits. Mayor Ackley, last meeting I inquired about the mysterious cameras and recording devices that showed up in our council chambers. When you had the floor, you remained silent. There was no explanation for them. We are asking you, Mayor Ackley, why haven't you initiated an investigation or taken any action to rectify the reckless behavior of our city manager? As a concerned resident, I see two choices here. You can let the Wall Lake residents know that you share our concerns on this pressing issue and what you plan to do about it, or you can remain silent. If you choose to remain silent, your silence will speak volumes. Yeah. That's all I have. Thank
you. Nobody saw that. Is there anyone else? Yes.
Dina Potter, 1856 Meadow Ridge. I don't know if you guys got calls or not, but up on South Commerce River, they opened a massage parlor and a little girl running around the parking lot with a sign, massage $20. Between the pot, the massage parlor, this is how you look out for our residents, by allowing this stuff in here. Except for council that has to live here. You others go to live in communities that don't allow this crap. City manager doesn't live here, and I bet most of these people don't either. There's one more thing. You have a business owner of one of these marijuana establishments that gets away with threatening residents, councilmen, and council candidates, and nothing is done about it. In my opinion, this is a disgrace. You are the leaders that have created this mess, and Mayor, you want to cry over some 5-year-old that says the city's so clean? Go get him now, see what he sees out here in town. I am so upset about this. And whoever does the minutes, look up the word diatribe. That happens to mean a forceful or bitter attack on someone or something. I in no way attacked any of you or bitterly said anything to you. I just stated facts and truth.
Very good. Audience participation. Okay. We'll close audience participation and go on to council reports. Anyone have a report?
Well, I was at the last trail meeting as the trail council representative, and we had some discussion about what was going to happen with the latest report for the new No, not the depot, no, about the new interlocal agreement. That's been put on hold for quite some time because the trail is now approaching completion. And as such, the trail has been closed. So pending that they finish up with all of their signalization, then the trail will be open. We've also gone ahead and put out bids for bollards to go at the different intersections of the trail so that vehicular traffic from approaching them. That's basically
If I add something to that. Supervisor Scott did mention though that all communities are in agreement that we are working on this new agreement for the trail, and that the communities of Wixom and Commerce Township are in agreement that we will continue to table this, so not to lose sight of the importance of this agreement. So that's how it stands, to continue to bring it up, continue to table it until we get to an agreement so it doesn't fall by the wayside.
Makes sense? Okay, is there anyone else? City managers report, please.
Mayor, council, I would request that you move to the city file and the Hartwell Division of Statistical Report.
Is there a motion, please?
I'll make that motion.
Support.
Any discussion on the reports?
Yes, Madam Director. A few questions, some points of inquiry. I have a question. Going through the reports, I don't see any code enforcement reports amongst the departmental reports. And driving through the city, there's like numerous lots on vacant residential and commercial properties. The property across from the beach, that the grass is really, really high. I don't see any citations in the departmental reports, and it looked terrible from the curbside. I just want to know what is being done to enforce areas like this to get them that appear to be in violation of code.
Mayor?
Yes.
We're out of the business of harassing businesses and customers with citations. And
my
service.
God.
Unprofessional approach that we had in the past is ended.
This
When
is
we deal with the
third-rate
people, we
shit.
get them to cut it. If they do not cut it, we cut it. If you look at the warrant, you'll find out that we have fees in there that we paid, and we're gonna charge it back to the property owners. That's how we're dealing with code enforcement.
Except
We're
it doesn't
not
get done.
bullying them, being mean to them, and cussing them. That's over with, so you're not gonna see a lot of citations.
Code
for that.
enforcement doesn't mean being mean and cussing at them.
Mayor, can I?
It means you care about your city, you get
Excuse me?
somebody to clean up their
Excuse me?
property, so everybody else doesn't have to look at it. Come on.
Excuse me, he's explaining how we are taking.
He's
care of it.
criticizing, making a personal attack on me, and I've had enough. Hook me up, throw me out.
Excuse
I've
me?
had plenty enough.
Excuse me?
Excuse me, Mayor.
Excuse me.
We're trying to be civilized here.
Sir, do you
I don't
want, do
appreciate
you
that.
want to stay in the council chambers?
Throw me out.
Please be quiet, I'm asking you.
I'm not gonna tolerate that.
I'm
I
asking
will
you
not
to
tolerate
please be
that.
quiet.
No more personal attacks, sir. And put your microphone so people can hear you talking.
I didn't hear any names mentioned, sir.
No? Everybody knows who he's talking about.
Okay, I'm asking you to please be quiet for the last time.
I will.
Thank you.
Mayor, we do not deal in writing tickets and bullying people. We're out of the business of that. We contact the people in a professional manner with police officers who have real authority when you get compliance. If they don't comply, then we move in and order the grass cut. The warrant will show that we did that on several occasions. So the pictures you're seeing or what you're doing to say something's wrong, you're absolutely right. Grass grows. When it rains, it grows and it grows fast. So we try to get compliant. Our issue is not about collecting tickets or getting revenue for getting tickets. We're going to court. It's compliance. That's what we're looking for, and that's what we're getting. Grass grows, it's gonna continue to grow. It grew before I got here, and it's gonna grow when I'm gone. That's the answer. On the warrant, you'll see that we spent several $100, somebody.
$745 on vacant properties that we cut that were not followed.
That should answer the question. We're dealing with vacant properties by cutting it and trying to get compliance without getting caught up. It actually costs more money to go to court than it does to deal with it and then cut it and then put it on the tax roll or charge it back in. So that should answer that question.
Maybe we could get some kind of code enforcement report as far as the properties that are addressed, so that if we look at it, we see a property that has issues, we'll notice be addressed.
If you want a report, we can do that. It just shows
Just be
that
noted, that's all.
compliance. If that's what you want, we'll do a report on everything that's done. The issue for us, for me, is compliance.
Right.
It's not about writing a ticket or getting credit for citing a resident or a business.
I have two more points of inquiry, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
On a check disbursement report, it shows on page 47, it shows an expense of $31,843 for a turning lane, the one out in front of City Hall. I don't remember this coming before council for approval, and my question was two parts. Did this come before council beforehand? And if so, did it go out for bid? I don't remember voting on a turning lane, a significant expense like this, so I'd like a little more insight to this expense, where it came from.
The expense, he said what happened, that we redid the apron out front. It was part of the redevelopment of the police, fire, Veterans Memorial apron, so we could do that. That was discussed and approved in the global project here, which was an extension of all of that. Bid requirements, you're asking if somehow bid requirements, it was the extension of the bids that were put out by the same company that did all the other stuff, so it's an extension of that. There's no special bid requirement to go out for that section, even though we completed it at a later date. We because of the delay. So the answer is the city council approved the major project here, including the right-of-way going over to the public safety extension next door. And out front, it was part of the original plan. I don't know why he doesn't remember that, but, you know.
That doesn't need
that
that
road-
side remark.
Yeah,
What are you
yes.
talking about?
Excuse me?
Talk directly to him.
The project for this parking lot was almost 2 years ago for the parking lot reconstruction. This is a fairly recent expense. I would think that this would have been done when they did the Naval Road extension improvements, as well as the parking change, the driveway change out front. It would have been done at that time. This does not seem to be, as I recall it, this does not seem to be part of that project. It's above and beyond it. And there was no discussion that this was occurring to council that I can recall. In the trade Tory, I'm not sure who that company is, construction, are they the same people that did the parking lot?
You want me to answer the question? Brad, you wanna help us out here? The construction project was an extension of the overall approval for here. The city council approved it, they're all in favor of it, except maybe one. You can't undo that. There was no, we didn't violate any bid proposal as you suggest, there was no requirement to bid. We piggybacked on other bids with the county and whatnot. So I don't even know what to add to that. You know, the city council knew we were extending it, they approved the extension, they approved the work that we did next door, they approved the work we did here. There were opposition to it, a lot of people didn't think it mattered that we were doing the improvement. That was simply an extension. The mayor and the city members of the city council wanted to improve the apron out front to get rid of the ditch. So when we had the Memorial Day parade and improved the memorial out front, that improvement was made and it's also safe. So if you don't like it, I guess we have to pull it up.
Well, the ditch did go before council for approval, and that was significantly less. My point is that this project seems 2 years after the fact, and I do not remember discussing it in any of our budget sessions. My other point of inquiry is on the same page, 47, there's a $10,000 expense to Boss Engineering for proposal letters. What exactly is, I mean, that's a very significant expense. What do we spend $10,000 on for letters?
Assuming you have an answer, or? Or who's going to address it?
No, I'm not gonna sit here while he pretends like he knows what he's doing.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Point
He
of
didn't-
order.
He never called ahead of time, he's never asked to meet with me, he
I-
doesn't participate.
I call the gentleman to order.
Mayor, I'm not a member of the city council. I have a right to speak as a matter of law.
With
Calling a
respect.
point of order on me having a discussion is not part of.
It's a
the
personal fun.
procedure. He can say that and interrupt me every time. If he wants to meet and
Point
get
of order.
discussion, the implication is we're doing something wrong. That is not what has happened. The implication is somehow he's the new auditor. We
Point
have spent
of
money
order,
on
Madam Mayor. Are you
both-
going to recognize my point of order?
Right here.
Okay, okay.
Can I finish?
No?
Yes, you can finish.
I-
We asked
I
a
will
question.
sit with
He
you.
doesn't have the floor. He doesn't have the floor.
I will sit with him and discuss any of that here. I'm not going to sit and participate in the attacks from the audience and his team out there. That is not what I can take.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Are you going to recognize it?
Okay, I have personally asked you to address these questions, we can answer them in a council meeting, but you want to throw out comments about each individual item that may have happened a month ago.
So you wanna know where the money went?
He's asking on behalf
Okay.
of the residents.
Would the audience please, we're having a discussion. You had almost an hour of your discussion. Would you let us discuss this issue? I'm asking you, please. We didn't interrupt your comments, and I would ask not to be interrupted. Very simple request.
3 minutes.
I have offered to sit with you, he has offered to sit with you and discuss issues that you have. And then if you continue to have issues, if you want to bring them up, point them out, that's fine.
The council meeting is where the public discussion should be had. The check disbursement report, we receive it over the weekend. To set up a meeting is not realistic. This is why we have a council meeting to conduct the public business in the public. The letter is dated 6/29/19, less than 3 weeks ago. All I'm asking is, what is this significant expense of $10,000 on letters? That's all I'm asking. It's fairly recent as what's dated on this check disbursement report of June 29th. Today is July 16th. Do we know the answer with the $10,000, what the letters
I
are?
will meet with you tomorrow if you come in, or the next day, unless you're working. Any day you want to come in, I will meet with you, and you can bring it up at the next council if you believe you've discovered something improper. I'm not going to sit here and dance for you.
Wow.
So, Madam Mayor, the public is here, this is their money, I'm asking what, I would
And
like
he
an
is
answer.
telling you he will meet with you and you can bring it up at the next meeting
like
with
to
the
know-
response.
He's not asking him, he's asking you.
Taxpayers wanna
He's
hear.
asking you.
That's why I'm asking.
Somebody needs to answer this question.
Okay. Do you have any further questions?
So my point of inquiry is not being
It's
answered.
not going to be answered tonight. He has offered to sit with you.
Behind closed doors.
Do you have any further questions?
Not on the disbursement report.
Okay, is there anyone else with questions? Roll call vote, please.
Clock, Woodland.
Yes.
Osnick.
Yes.
Robertson. Ambrose. Costanzo.
No.
Ackley.
Yes. Okay, the next item, sir, number 2.
I thought it was going to be a joyous event, but it doesn't look like some people want it to be that way, but I'm going to invite.
Here we go. There
I'm
we
going to
go.
invite.
It's time.
See.
You know, it's gonna be a joyous event. Let's take a recess.
It's not a meeting, is it?
Stay tough, Gabe.
It's always to be continued. It's meetings about meetings, talking about meetings, and then nothing. I know what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna buy a lawnmower, so I can cut some of that grass around the city. That's what I'm gonna do. She's
I hope you found maybe we can get them to come next month and get you brought up. Or you can pull it up in the minutes. When they have it, it comes up in minutes. Yeah, I haven't had dinner.
Susie, I meant to bring the memorial door. I just wanted to come over and tell you. Always going through the correspondence and they're going so fast. I looked at it, flipped it to the top, went down the row.
Yeah.
So it didn't fall back.
I'm so sorry you had to go to
What's that? Yeah. For the vote. Okay. Yes. Is the closed session about to? Yeah, they're in closed session now. No. You don't want that. Thanks. You guys lived here for a long time, you know? Yeah, 30 years. 1989 I moved here. What's that?
I got to meet, I've been here since 6.
I'm supposed to be at my birthday party.
Happy birthday.
I don't think I'm gonna make it. I told him to postpone it until tomorrow.
That's a good sign. Yeah, they gave it to me, so he's a good dude. The first one was the worst. That's what I just did.
I'm putting this.
on your next item?
Want to see if everybody comes back in?
They're here.
I don't know, let's give them a minute. I like them.
I've lost him a long time ago and I didn't know this. Okay. We're still in your report, Mr. City Manager.
Wait one more minute, so people come in. Okay?
Are we on number 2?
Yes. Yes, we are, Mayor. I would like to call forward a friend of mine. He's the executive director for the Wall Lake Community Theater, otherwise known as JET, the Jewish Ensemble Theater. Chris, could you come up, introduce yourself, and tell us about the new Wall Lake Theater?
I'm glad we finally figured out who you were.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you everybody for giving me a few moments here. And I must tell you, it is such a pleasure to be here. I mean, listening to you guys, it's such an impassioned community. And, you know, it's obvious everybody cares. And that's really what I'm so happy about, that we've come here and really to be involved, and hopefully we can ingratiate ourselves to the community and become a real resource. We're a 501c3 not-for-profit professional theater. We've been in existence for 29 years. We do a 4-show main stage season, which is actually running right now. We started with The Odd Couple on June 10th, and we'll be running until November 3rd. But we also have extensive outreach touring programs that go into middle, high school, and elementary schools all over the southeastern Michigan area. We see about 30,000 children with our anti-bullying shows. So we're so pleased to be here, and I must tell you that, as I said, I'm happy, but I got to tell you that, you know, I've been dealing with your city offices as we've gone through our permits and, you know, built the theater. By the way, we're over in the shopping mall with the Harbor Freight. We're on the end cap where the bank and the post office used to be. So please consider coming and joining us and seeing some of the shows. But everyone in the office has been very professional and very welcoming. And so thank you so much for inviting us into your home. And I won't take any more time because you guys have spent a lot, but I will tell you, if you have children, on Saturdays in August, Little Red Riding Hood is coming to the theater. So if you want to bring children, we'd love to have you guys. So thank you very much.
Chris has been with the company over there, I guess you call it the company,
Yeah.
for a while, and they came out of West Wingfield. We were working on that with them before I ever met him, trying to bring some of that culture to Wall Lake. When I read many years ago, probably 2 years ago, you can help me, it was in the Jewish Times that they were looking for a place to relocate. Anyway, it landed here, turns out to be great. I've been to the first one. It was the pre-opening night, and it was great. It was full of folks who committed their entire lives to the last 29 years of donating to the theater committee theater and stuff like that. So they had a great dinner. I think now Misbehaving's coming up next.
Ain't Misbehaving will open on August 2nd. Yeah.
So if you can get in there to see it, you're literally sitting on the stage. I mean, you're part of that. And I'm old enough to remember the very first Odd Couple movie, and then the TV show. They did a great presentation, so we can get everybody over there. DA has more or less agreed to provide some support for their signage, and if he gets that packaged up to us, that probably is up at the next agenda to help them with their signage. Right now, they got a little canvas cover or plastic. But they got a professional shop inside, so get by there, see the event, and I think that they bring a lot of culture to Wall Lake. We've never had a community theater before.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. I think the next thing that's up is pretty important, to do a presentation on the property next door, which we have referred to as the Public Safety Campus Extension. We all commonly know that as the farmer's market. The discussion about selling it came up. We should have a discussion about all of that. It begins tonight. I will invite the architect and the planner from Boss Engineering and our city engineer to do a little presentation, but it begins with a little history. Some of you know it, some of you have been here. There's always been a plan to use that parcel, going all the way back to early 2000. The reason we know that's a plan is because they spent $1.1 million buying to develop it. So there's all kinds of sketches, maps, and they were gonna build Taj Mahal over there. Well, that may or may not have worked politically or financially, but what we know is the downturn killed everything, so it took a dip, nothing was getting done. We also discovered after they purchased it that there was contamination deep in the soil. And the management at the time and the leadership at the time, their decision was to fence it in, which is no plan at all. It was fenced in for years. The city council was part of the remediation of the campus here, which was sinking. They included money to cap that so that it can be utilized. They included money to go from this parking lot over to that area to be able to utilize it in the future. So the issue is, what do you do with it in the future? We've had plans from the beginning. They've been modified from time to time. So if we're gonna talk about what to do with it in the future, you have to know that the contamination runs deep. We capped it, we remediated it, we didn't fix it. The discussion about selling it is, there's twofold there. You're selling a piece of property to fund another project, you're burning your furniture your first winter. You only, for firewood, you only get to do that one winter. So selling it to fund another project makes no logical sense if you're a manager in municipal government. Secondly, to remediate that, to actually fix it, could cost anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million. The property can't possibly be worth that based on our own scenario around here, what other properties similarly situated are worth. So what we're going to propose to you tonight, or tell you what we've been working on for some time, includes a rendition of what it would look like as an extension of public safety campus. It also includes what the mayor and some of the council members have been working on literally for years, is to put a police, fire, and veterans memorial in that area, which is then fed by the people that are coming down the trail. So it's an invitation to come down the trail to visit what will be a completely new site, and it will double as a farmer's market, a pavilion, any other kind of thing, but it also, its main purpose would be for police and fire training and the memorial site. The funding for that then comes from our public safety funding, which is the forfeiture funds, which is authorized, can be spent for that should the city council decide that's what we're going to do with it. So with that, Brad, you feel free to come up or Patrick, how about you? You come up, both of you come up. And so the city council and the audience know who you are. This is, Brad's with Boss Engineering, and so is Patrick. And they've been working on this for some time. Brad, you've been working on it for at least a year?
Yeah, almost 2.
Okay, so do we have a PowerPoint or anything? Or what?
Yes, we have a PowerPoint here. Is there an extra one of those?
Yeah, sure.
I just wanted to give it some. What's on the photo? For you, sorry. We have some boards here, but everything that's on the boards are also in PowerPoint. So I didn't really want to put them up, I might block some of the view. So, but if we need to refer to them later. Again, my name is Patrick Cleary with Boss Engineering. I'm a landscape architect and planner, and quite familiar with Brad. I'm sorry to block you there, guys. As Dennis said, there has been work on the site for several years. This is the existing site a couple years ago. Let's see if I can do the pointer here. There was an open ditch and the drain. Oops, I lost it. All right, I feel more comfortable pointing. You have the open ditch on the southeast side, and that continues and wraps around. And then just on the left side of the photograph, it goes north to the lake eventually. And that was open between the parking lot that you see on the right and going through there. There has, and there was also in that northeast corner, there was that fenced-in area that Dennis alluded to. The area a couple years ago actually was a portion of that was capped. or filled in, the northeast area was capped, the fence was removed, make it a little bit more accessible. What we have been doing recently, and then this lower area is the current Wednesday's Farmers Market. And this is just kind of a summary of a couple of things that have been done. One thing I would like to add, as it was talked about earlier, is the Airline Bike Trail now goes along the north side, where the railroad tracks are. And that does provide some opportunity to utilize that property if we can do some more things with that drain that parallels it. So a couple months ago, we did start doing some initial planning, and so you have again the Airline Bike Trail at the top of the slide. You have the fire station off on the right hand side. We have the connection from the parking lot through there, and there's a number of different features which will have some pictures. But just to orient you, you've got East West Maple down at the bottom. We have an enlarged parking lot that would serve additional training functions for police and fire. It would work double duty to provide additional parking for the farmers market. It would be initially a paved parking, or right now would be proposed as a paved parking, so that some of the water issues and other things that are currently there could help be alleviated. The red angled block, if you will, is an observation shelter for some training facilities. It would also work double duty as an enclosed or a covered shelter, I should say, for farmers market activities, like if they back their pickup trucks or something into the back of it, so there would be less tents. That big circle on the upper right hand side would be an enclosed fire training facility. That would be a training facility with shipping containers, and I'll explain that in a minute. The far northwest side, which is a currently kind of gravel open area, would be the connection from the Airline Bike Trail. We would have kind of they call it a pseudo bridge, which is basically a pretty looking culvert to make it a little bit less expensive but still make it aesthetically pleasing. Would cross that open ditch. That ditch would be enhanced a little bit. That would provide the area into kind of a seating area, into the shelter area. That memorial could be there. It could also be where that kind of circle is on the south side, which was originally planned as kind of like a play area. That could also become a memorial area. So you get kind of the plan view. These are some of the images that the red rectangle shelter would be that middle image, which would be, again, kind of a cantilever open shelter. The one below it is shipping, regular shipping containers that fire departments purchase now. They'll buy them used, and they use them for training. Sometimes they set them on fire. Sometimes they add steps so that they can climb up, climb down, use their firefighting equipment. There would be hydrants and other things there. That big, huge circle that I showed is like a heavy concrete, so they can put fire trucks on and other things without destroying it. Incidentally, that big, huge piece of concrete covers that contaminated soil, so it kind of works double duty there. We have just a couple other features that pseudo bridge that I mentioned in the upper right-hand corner, and then we would be incorporating some of the decorative light fixtures and stuff that are throughout the town. This is an image from East West Maple, kind of looking at the northwest corner. You see the parking lot in the foreground, the shelter in the background. We'd be adding some additional trees and landscaping, some planters. Way in the back, you can kind of see some of the shipping containers. And again, there would be a lot of double uses for this. And so if we can take advantage of those double uses, we can get the funding to pay for them and enhance the fire and police training and justify it that way, but also have the added community benefit of the farmers market and other aspects of it. This is another picture of one of those, of a bridge. Again, that would be something that the trail users coming down the trail, they could see that, they could cross it. It would be a little bit more aesthetically pleasing element there. And this is just, again, a summary of, again, emphasizing dual purpose elements. Segregated fire training facility, contaminated areas continue to be capped. We have paved areas. for the farmer's market and for the expanded parking for training, the combination observation shelter, market vendor shelter, having the bike trail access, wonderful new trail, and having a trailhead that could bring more people into the city. We would have some of that gravel area that's existing in the northwest corner would be reutilized, and then we would be, it's not the most attractive ditch right now, overgrown. We would be able to improve that. It's a county drain, but we could improve that and make it look a little bit more like a creek, and again emphasize that look from the trail and make it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, as well as providing some of the functional capabilities. I ran through that really fast. Just wanted to give you a synopsis on those items. And is it open to questions now?
I want to add some things to that. The remediation issue, the word remediation versus rehabilitation versus cleanup. This council voted to remediate, to cap it, to put it to use so that there wasn't a lot of expenditure to clean up. You're gonna try to sell it, you're gonna have to spend a whole lot more money, and you always can have that discussion.
Could you use your microphone?
But it's gonna cost a lot of money to clean up.
Thank you.
If you wanna sell it, and then you gotta guess about what you might get out of it anyway. The city paid $1.1 million for the property. It will not sell for that. Even if it's sold for that, that's not gonna pay down on the projects that we need to pay for in the city. There's a whole lot of other issues. The reason we've been working on this for a couple of years. It all started when we realized the city campus was collapsing and this whole process had to be cleaned up. We also know that we had no way of funding a new city hall like they had been trying to do literally for 15 years, all the way back to 2000, 2007 and all of that. So this is simply a redo of what had been discussed several years before my arrival. And what we found is that they never concluded a training facility, which then excluded the use of the public safety forfeiture money. We've been very fortunate in terms, our program is working for us. We have undercover officers working with DEA, and I'll let the chief tell you how much we got there, and that can be committed to do this. And from the beginning, we've known there's gonna be a trail. I mean, people are peddling it differently, but we've known there's gonna be a trail, always gonna be a trail, because they abandoned the railroad. The plan began with knowing there was gonna be a trail. The only trade-off was, where was the trailhead gonna be? Well, at this stage of the game, backed up, let that take its course politically, there's not gonna be a trailhead on Pontiac. There's not gonna be anything. This is really the invitation to the bikers and the people on the trail. And this would be an invitation for them to come in. That bridge, it's a culvert, dueling as a bridge. It'll be an invitation for those people to park and literally becomes the trailhead. That's not gonna get done over on Pontiac. It's not gonna get done because all of the money that was originally conceived as funding the rehabilitation of that area was siphoned away to build the gateway to commerce. All of it. The trail exists, it will always exist. We are not gonna get the depot. You're not gonna fund the depot. This is your option, and it can be a dual purpose, triple purpose, quadruple purpose place. Selling it from where I sit is not an option for the two reasons I mentioned earlier. Selling a piece of your property to fund another project in 1/10 or 1/4 even of what it's gonna be is not a solution to those problems. Secondly, what you sell it for is gonna be so little that it's better to keep it and use it as a training facility that duels as a parking lot and all that. So what we want you to do is consider not selling it and not ignoring the issues of the lack of a trailhead now. We're not gonna have a trailhead. We've got asphalt and we've got a trail, but we've always gonna have that, and everybody on the council knows that. What you do with the trail council, it's up to you. It's another layer of government, but you're not gonna have a trailhead. This will be your trailhead. You got a separate way to fund it. We can fund it with that money, provided the two chiefs agree. They've been working on it for a couple of years to get not only the police chief agrees that we need a memorial on this end of the county. There's one in North End, and a fire memorial and a veterans memorial, which can double up, which is why we extended the acre right here at the beginning. So what I'm proposing to you, you should consider selling it is not an option from where I sit. And then you can talk about it.
Okay, we have some discussion on this.
Yes, I have a point of inquiry after his report. Do we have an estimated cost of this project?
Probably not yet, it's conceptual.
No, we didn't put, this could look totally different. I didn't commit the money, to draft up costs, and the reason is you really can sell it. It may not, you have the right to sell it and spend the money wherever you want. But I'm telling you, you're not gonna get the money that will make it worth selling. The cleanup, it's a dangerous concept to sell a piece of property and say that the new owner is gonna clean it up. Well, they can walk away from it, and under the rules, we're gonna have to pay for that. Better to leave it alone, to cap it like we've done, and utilize it for a facility, and utilize it as a dual, triple purpose facility that feeds the improvements to the trail and replaces the lack of a trailhead over there on what everybody thought for years, for the last 9 years, was going to be the trailhead. It's not. It's going to be grassy area. And that's okay, because we can do a better job. But this will be yours, and it will serve as anything you want it to serve as. And we can get it funded, provided the chiefs agree. We can get it funded if you commit to the memorial for the police. That money can only be spent for certain things. And it can be spent for that, for training facilities, for memorials, and those kind of things. It doesn't stop us from utilizing it for other things. The room you sit in right now, you refer to it as a chamber, the council chambers. I submit to you, this is the police training room. This was built with forfeiture money that required this to be, the auditors come in and say, where's the training room? This is where it's at. This is, the council member that used to meet over there in the chamber. So this was built with that money. We can do the same kind of thing. We can have it double up over there and make I think the entire county will be appreciative of a police memorial and a fire memorial. And of course, it ties into the Veterans Memorial, which the mayor's been working on for literally for a year or so. So that's pretty much all I can say about it. The cost of it, if there's an interest in that, we move forward. If you're going to sell it, then we don't move forward.
What I'd like to see us do tonight, and I guess I have to start by saying I'm probably the only one sitting here that had anything to do with purchasing the property next door. Some were in the city, but they didn't have part of the decision. When you've sat here as long as I've sat here, sometimes you make decisions and you wonder why you did them. At that time, it had an old, rundown, dilapidated, ready to fall in bowling alley. We were told there was no contamination, and I guess changes in the law, it became contaminated, or there's many stories to that. But we did have plans for it, and that was for a new police station, city hall. We had big plans. We didn't have a DPW at that time. This building was in poor shape, and the cost was just astronomical, and the economy went down, and it didn't happen. So last week, or last meeting, when it was discussed about possibly looking into selling it, I knew that there was plans, and I asked for a committee to look into it, knowing that these plans would come about, but I didn't know how far along they were. I didn't realize Brad and his team had been working with the police chief and the fire chief quite as much as they had. So what I'd like to ask the council tonight is, instead of having a committee to solely review selling or whatever for this piece of property, is that we create a committee to review these plans. If the plans fail, we decide not to do it, then we can still continue to look into selling it. But I'd like to see a committee set up of police, fire, and veterans. It's going to be a police, fire, and fire veterans memorial. I'd like to see it set up with these people, say a 5 committee to look into this and work with the chiefs, work with Brad's group, and see what we can do with this piece of property. I think we can possibly even utilize it as our Parks and Rec. Maybe instead of an open, we could start having our concerts here. Our concerts are so poorly attended in the park, but if we can get them along the trail, even with this construction going on, I was standing talking to Casey the other day, I can't believe the number of people that are still they're going around the piles of gravel and over the gravels and they're still using the trail. So there's going to be a lot of people going down the trail, and if we can bring more people see what's at the City Hall complex, come to the farmer's market, come to Park and Rec events, I think it would be a plus for the city and it would be a great use for this. So if I could get a motion tonight to come back with you at the next meeting with a committee made up of those people that I've asked, a 5-person committee, and
You got it.
that's my request.
I make that motion.
Support.
Continue on with your 5-person committee to study the new proposed campus.
Police, fire, and veterans.
Police, fire, and veterans.
Mayor, under discussion, let me call on the police chiefs to tell you how much money we got. That might
Okay,
encourage
well,
the
let's take a vote on the motion, and then we'll get
Well,
the.
if it passes, I'm gonna be happy, but if it doesn't pass, then you're not gonna know.
Well, we still got the money, right?
I don't know. You call.
But it has to
you
be
call,
used
you
for
call.
certain purposes, and this is dual purpose.
Yeah.
Come on up and talk while we got the motion on the floor.
Keep
You're
it
just,
short. How
you're
much
just
money
over
we
there
got?
beaming to do it, so go ahead.
We've had an officer in the DEA as a task force officer since 2008. So in that time, we've received over $2 million in the Walled Lake as far as being part of that. That's taking from criminals on the streets. These are big guys. These are not dime bags. We are making a difference having an officer here from Walled Lake. Just this year alone, we've received over $300,000, and that's available for a project like this, whatever we deem.
It's restricted funding, can only be spent on the very things that we're talking about tonight. The understanding of how to spend that is why you're able to do some of the things we're doing. We met that here. When I came, there were people who wanted to fix the city hall and get rid of the old red building, whatever that was. But the funding was an issue. I met with the chief, the same chief. We had the discussion about how to fund it, and that's what we built. We built this with that funding, and we've done several things with that funding. As long as it's public safety related, and the chief is good with it, and of course, the public safety counts with fire and all that. And they can specifically fund memorials and those kind of things. But it's restricted. You can't just say, take money out of the general fund and use that money. We can't use it to fix roads unless you can somehow make a finding that it's public safety related. That's why that is the public safety campus extension. And it's why it has been for several years, because we know that our officer is doing his job. We do arrest people here. We work directly with the federal government. We do arrest them. We've made at least one arrest for, well, I won't get too deep, but we are doing our job here. The idea that somehow we're ignoring, we're not only doing it, but we're bringing in the money. So I'd like you to vote for that. I think the mayor's motion is great, and it'll put us on the right track. And we'll come back at the next meeting with a little more.
Either one of the chiefs, is there any memorial in this part of the county, a police fire memorial? I know there's one over at the courthouse.
I don't believe that might be the only joint one.
What was that?
The only joint one that I'm aware of is in Pontiac, the 1200 building.
Our vision is to include, again, some of you know this better than me, down on the Pontiac and West Wall Lake, there was a memorial there. And the leaders at the time decided to move that. and you left what amounts to a second memorial, another plaque that says we moved it. And of course, my understanding of why they did that is because they would lose the rights to that property if it wasn't maintained as a memorial because of the Tuttle Foundation. So that's why it still has a little thing, but that's not the memorial. The memorial, anybody who gets it would walk out front and know the memorial with all the names of the people who mentioned are out front, have been there from the beginning.
The
So
face,
if you walk out
of
front-
it was transferred up here.
Yeah,
and
if
then-
you go out front, it's under the flagpole, and our proposal would include, again, we're hooking it all together, the continuation, the improvements of the apron out there, but improving that memorial, cleaning it up, and identifying any more that needs to go on the memorial, and make that, and all of that would be the same project that we're here. That would bring people off of the trail, and it would be an invitation. It would be a place to visit. It would be a destination. Right.
And I think the fact that we would have a training facility for the police and fire would be, I mean, I can only say how proud I am of our police and fire. Just looking at the accident that happened this weekend, I mean, that could have been a tragic ending, and you cut the woman out of the car, and that afternoon, I understand she walked out of the hospital. So because of our quick response and our skills and what you did, and I think the two departments need to be commended, but they also need a chance to do the training and continue to serve the community.
You stole my report on the police and fire over the weekend, but I'm good with that.
And our equipment.
We were in early because there's some other issues that I'll probably mention to. Chief and I were meeting early Saturday morning. We had an event, as y'all know, in the afternoon, the fireworks and all that. But the chief and I met early in the morning because of another very serious issue, which I'll report tonight a little bit about. And we left that discussion. We were having that discussion in Tim Hortons, and we both pulled out and drove right up on an accident. It was, I think they called it a T-bone or something. And the woman was trapped in the car. The other woman was out. Both chiefs were there. The police chief, he supervised all those police cars, and we had plenty of them on that day because they were out for the special event. But I would like to particularly commend the fire chief. Chief Chicanis and I were together, and he was there, and his officers did a great job of blocking the traffic. But the fire chief himself was no less than the best firefighter on the scene. He was on top of it. I've got video, I've got footage. He was there. He's the guy in the white hat. He truly is a white-hatted fire chief. And they cut the woman out with the equipment that other people rejected. The people said we didn't need it. And they stabilized the car with equipment that this council approved so that it didn't tumble, and it wouldn't catch on fire and burn somebody up in it. And they cut her out while I was there. I got video of it where she was cut out. Her husband was there. Her little daughter was there. They arrived later, but the little daughter was there. It was a sight to behold. The fire chief supervisor, from the moment it happened, he was on the job. Our fire department is surpassed by none. They're the best in the area, and our fire chief is the best in the area. I watched it happen at the very first time that I was bragging on that, there was another accident where they weren't so fortunate, literally at the same time. Was that chief? That was in another accident that happened in Farmington Hills on 8 Mile, and there were two fatalities at literally the same time. So having your own fire department and dealing with that and not getting sucked away to another event, that would have taken people. But we had 2 fatalities. Again, I'm sure there are different kinds of accidents, but sometimes they don't end as well. This team, you had to see it, and I'll probably have some video for you at the next meeting or whatever, but it was tremendous what they did, the fire department. I mean, you're gonna be proud of them. It was amazing what they did. I expect there'll be an article in the Spinal Column. They were on it pretty quick, so I expect that to do. And again, the chief and I fire chief did a great job, and he's in the video. The police chief's in the video, but the best I could see him do was put a blanket over the other injured person, but that was still important. So vote. I want you to vote.
Okay, are we ready to vote now? Okay, roll call, please.
Lublin,
Yes.
Osnick.
Yes.
Robertson.
Yes.
Ambrose.
Yes.
Costanzo.
Yes.
Locke. Ackley.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
I got one more thing, or I got a couple more things. In our review of what's going on in what's called Tri-A, we discovered, I was alerted by an astute real estate agent, that we don't own all of Marshall Taylor Park. Apparently there's a little parcel up front with its own Sidwell number that was sold some time ago at tax sale, and was owned by someone who passed. The widow inherited it, and she's willing to sell it. It seems to me that it's not buildable, but it's actually part of what we thought was Marshall Taylor Park. So I simply like the council to instruct me, as a matter of record, to go see what deal I can cut and see if we can make that part of the park. Some people think it is, but you see every once in a while on the internet, these people that don't like each other, they go up and put up posts, so one day I can see a fence come up if there's a new buyer. But it's available, and I would like council to at least send me on that mission to see what it takes to acquire that parcel.
Do we have a motion?
I have something else to say.
Well, there's that astute
We got a
real
motion,
estate
let's
agent.
get a second, and then you can.
We don't need a motion.
Oh, we don't need the motion?
Not yet.
I'd just like to let council know that I spoke to the owner of the property today, and we had an in-depth conversation about how it would be important for that property to be part of the city's property, since it is the entrance of the park, and that the property was not really buildable because it was a small lot. You wouldn't get much. It would probably only benefit somebody to the north, south, east, west of the parcel. So, in talking to her, she said, well, maybe I should just donate it to the city. And I said, you would do that? And she said, yeah, let me talk to my accountant and talk to my sons, and I'll get back with you. And that was today. So we might not have to spend any money to.
I still have to get permission from them to accept it.
Yeah. Well, she did say she owns 5 parcels in the city of Walled Lake. 4 of them are going on the market for sale, and she hasn't been cutting the grass on the other 4 parcels. So she just got a bill today for $1,000 in cutting grass.
Well, we're pretty rough on that.
And she said, is there anything you can do with that? I said, I have no control, but I could talk to council. Maybe if you donate the property, we can get that bill waived. So, just to bring that up to you.
Why don't we have a motion for the city manager to?
I already made that motion.
To talk.
All I need is a second, just to inquire.
Yeah, that means if she donates, we're good.
To acquire and discuss. Is there a second? Okay, we have a second. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Osnick.
Yes.
Robertson.
Yes.
Ambrose.
Yes.
Costanzo.
Yes.
Locke. Lublin.
Yes.
Ackley.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I got another thing that's on the agenda, and I got a couple more to just touch on quickly. I'm reporting to you because the Recreation Commission, it wants to buy some stuff that wasn't in the budget. I don't believe we need a budget amendment to do that. I'm gonna try to purchase it if it doesn't come in under what the purchase is. We don't have to bid it, but I have authority to spend certain, and actually can move the budget and up their budget, a certain authority. But so you know, the Recreation Commission believes that putting signage in the parks or bulletin boards or something is gonna help the use of the parks. I don't have any objection to making that on my own. I don't know how it's gonna turn out. Ms. Gross has forwarded that to me and tried to get it to council sooner than later, and we've done that today. So I don't really need a motion unless there's an objection. I'm gonna move forward and try to put together, they call it a freestanding message board, and I guess they've seen them in other parks where you put messages up. I think it can turn into something a little more difficult than they think, but we need to give it a try. Who manages it and what messages are putting up, it kind of gets tough, but remember the Recreation Commission is an advisory board. That's not really a job. And even if you think they're doing a job, they can quit anytime they want. So we may inherit something. I'm gonna give it a shot, and unless there's an objection, that's why it's on the agenda. So if I hear no objection, I'm going to acquire that and do what Ms. Gross has ordered me to do, okay?
I'm assuming it's to advertise the other parks and stuff in the city. I mean, if we use the city beach anymore and we're using it, we're gonna be standing on top of each other.
You know, I would like to think they have the best interest of the city involved, so it will be for improving the parks, attendance, and that kind of thing. That's our premise.
Okay.
All right, the other thing I'd like to tell you about, and I'd like to report, and this is a sad note, I will be issuing, well, I have already, that we will not be doing, we will suspend any operations with Dance Dynamic, which is across the street, as administratively. The reason that's so is because there's a whole lot of activity going on that's pretty nasty on the internet, and accusations of improper conduct. I happen to have information that it's more than that. It involves people with Dance Dynamics, and I believe we're at risk if we continue to do business in the same way before. They can continue to do business, but I will not be inviting them to our festivals until they resolve that issue. There is an outstanding issue. It's a very serious matter. It is a criminal matter. It's more than just he said, she said. There's some issues that have to be, and it's not pretty. So Dance Dynamic, as much as you know her for 30 years, there's some issues that we have to protect the city's well-being. And it's sad and it's embarrassing. But I will issue the memo that everybody, we're gonna keep our distance until they work that out. And until the authorities finish their complete investigation. There is a criminal investigation.
Correct, and then on that, also on that note, there have been no formal charges yet, so we're, not to say presuming innocent.
I use the word investigation, it means just
Right,
that.
right. So
anybody who assumes because there's investigation that there's charges, they're doing a disservice to the community. We do have a complaint that if turned out to be true, would be considered criminal, a very serious criminal act. There could be more, and it's really not a pretty event. So we gotta find out what this is, but it's much more than a Facebook event. It's much more than a Twitter event. All of you must have seen it. I think it made the news and all that. So we have to deal with it. I feel bad for the family. I feel bad for the people who are involved in the school or the studio. But we have a duty to pay attention to that. So that's a position we're taking in administration, is that we should discontinue any connection with that until that's resolved. I suppose this is the time to tell you that the mandate you gave me on the inquiry on council member Costanzo is going to require more time, and I want to notify the city council that there'll be more time. I'm not prepared to issue a report tonight.
Okay, is that all of your report?
That should be it.
Okay, doesn't look like we have any correspondence. Is there anything that's come in? Attorney's report.
I just have the closed session item.
Okay, I need a motion to go into executive session.
I have a point of inquiry on that. You cite section 8 of the Open Meeting Act for the reason for going into closed session on the PUD. I'd just like to read for the public what section 8 is, so that they understand why we're going into closed session as the reason is stated in the agenda. Paragraph H, section 8 of the Open Meeting Act. To consider material exempt from discussion or disclosure by state or federal statute. My point of inquiry is, what is the state or federal statute involving going in closed session on a PUD that you are citing?
The exemption for the closed session is to discuss privileged attorney-client communication. And that is a recognized exemption under the Open Meetings Act.
In paragraph H, or which state?
I would have to check the statute to give you the actual cite to the correct paragraph or subparagraph. I can't say for sure without having the statute in front of me what the actual cite is. But but it is a very well recognized, a very well established exception to the Open Meetings Act.
I understand, we have no pending litigation on this matter. I think that with a PUD, that the people's business should be conducted in front of the people. We saw the crowd that was there at the beginning of the meeting, and I would prefer that we don't go into closed session to discuss this, but.
Okay.
Well, the reason for the closed session is because there is it's not necessarily to discuss the PUD itself and how council's gonna vote on that. It's for the purpose of discussing a proposed development agreement that sets forth contractual terms that will control and have binding effect in the event that the council did decide to approve it. So and obviously that's a contract we are in current negotiations with the developer over the terms of the contract, and to have those discussions, in an open meeting where the other side of the contract is here sitting out in the audience is obviously would be a very bad idea, because then you're letting them know, what your private negotiation positions are and what types of concessions you might or might not be willing to make, things of that nature. So I did prepare a cover letter to the proposed agreement, and the purpose of the closed session would be to discuss my legal recommendations and conclusions concerning the terms of the development agreement itself, which is the contract.
I understand. So the public agreement, as a follow-up question to that, it's in our council package, a public record. So that is the agreement. I prefer that our conversation about this, is this conversation about this agreement?
It's about my legal review and recommendations concerning the agreement.
It's not about what's in the packet, it's his review. Okay, so based on the attorney's recommendation, do I have a motion to go into?
So move.
Is there support?
Support.
Roll call, please.
Robertson,
Yes.
Ambrose.
Yes.
Costanzo.
No.
Locke, Lublin,
Yes.
Osnick.
Yes.
Hackley.
Yes. Do you have anything else, Dan?
No.
Okay. Unfinished business, we have the resolution to withdraw from the trail that's been coming up every month, and Casey, you've had a discussion.
Yeah, in discussion with Casey, I'll just say, we'll just hold it over to the next meeting.
Okay. That's.
I support you make the motion.
Yeah.
Who made the
Just a motion, just hold it over to the next meeting.
Okay. Roll call, please.
I wanted to just, since it's next. The motion's been tabled for 7 months in a row. I mean, at this point, the trail's being constructed. To withdraw at this point is a moot point. I move to amend the motion to table indefinitely. Once the trail is built, we can we can untable the motion or introduce a new motion to withdraw from the trailway.
The purpose of keeping it on the agenda in Casey's discussion with members from the council is to keep it in the forefront. John and I talked about tabling it indefinitely, but that puts it on the back burner. We are trying to get this interlocal agreement rewritten. I think it's close, at least the discussions I've had, it's close. And it's a 2-second motion, and it keeps it out there in front that Wall Lake still wants to get a resolution to that agreement.
I believe you were at that trail council meeting. Wasn't that the recommendation of the supervisor, Scott, in agreement with the other parties, that we continue to table this, to keep it in front of everybody so that everybody keeps working on it?
The multiple meetings were had on the interlocal agreement.
I'm not talking about the last meeting, but multiple meetings. I'm talking about exactly what Supervisor Scott asked us to do.
Those meetings have not been fruitious. They have not borne fruit yet. Now, the other two communities are still working on their version. We all three have to come to an accord before this thing goes through. This motion and this resolution keeps their feet to the fire to keep moving forward on getting the new agreement.
And they agree with that, they asked us to keep doing that.
Right, and there's more to this agreement than just completing the trail.
Right.
This agreement is going to function for years to come.
Absolutely.
And how we maintain and improve, and as long as the other communities are willing to continue to discuss the changes, I think it's important we do as they ask and keep it in the forefront to show our good faith that we want to get this agreement concluded.
It's nothing about the trail. The trail is being built.
Right.
It's the council.
That's
Three-party agreement.
Okay?
Mayor,
Roll call.
Hold it.
Oh,
You want to say something?
the trail is essentially complete. You got a trail right now. The issue is about the perpetual maintenance of the trail forever. The additional cost and overhead for a second layer of government. If you don't do a good interlocal, Wall Lake will be, the taxpayers will be on the receiving end of they're not going to look out for you. They have revenue in commerce because they got the signs up. We don't have that.
Right.
So if you don't do a good agreement, and the reason you're doing, I almost agree with Councilman Costanzo that killing it, maybe it's good faith, almost. That maybe you throw one and say, we're gonna kill it, but you got 2 months and I'm gonna put it back on. But again, this is a negotiating tactic. I don't know if the councilman agrees with that, but maybe you do kill it, get it off the table, say, okay, we just threw you on, but I think it was, you put it back on 2 months from now. If they don't come to the table, you can still pull out.
Exactly.
Right.
You can still pull out. But it's always been about leverage. My argument against the trail management has never been against the trail. It's always about the city taxpayers being on the hook for the cost of perpetual maintenance for the depot, which we now believe is not gonna happen at all. And but it still applies to the higher level of government. They get in there, 2 people vote, and Wall Lake taxpayer is paying for it. And trust me, Wall Lake has not come out good on any of these negotiations. This has not been a good negotiation. We have a trail, but we always would have had a trail.
Correct.
The day they abandoned the railroad, you had a trail. The issue for Wall Lake now is protecting the taxpayers' dollars. You got a trail.
And these other two
And if
communities.
this goes here, you're gonna have a trail here.
These other two communities understand what our points are.
For
And
the
there is
first time
revenue.
ever, I'm gonna agree with Councilman. I think you ought to call it up for a vote, kill it, and then walk them into the next meeting and say, if you don't cut a deal and do the right thing for us, we're gonna pull out the trail. Because they don't have to agree with either. And they need Wall Lake. Commerce needs Wall Lake.
Well, it works out better, okay, while we're going through this. There are sources of revenue, there is that display board. There's a possibility of other display boards that could be put along that trail, okay, which would generate revenue for everybody. It's just a matter of getting to the agreement. Now, that was brought up at the last meeting, okay, that we're gonna get into discussion on. So, I mean, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Okay, I'm just going according to what they asked us to do and to continue to do it, and we can talk at the next trail
These are
meeting.
the same people who said they were
I-
gonna redo the depot, they were gonna pay for everything, they were gonna put the veterans on
Both sides of their face for the past 2 years.
Well, listen, okay,
What
they
does
asked
it
us
hurt?
last time.
It does not hurt to keep it on.
Right,
the
they asked,
agenda.
they asked us if we would, continue to table it, and we're gonna get a discussion. Let's table it again, and we'll have that discussion at the next meeting about how long are we gonna table this for. We're done with this trail here, August, okay? Virgin voyage is September, so let's go from there, all right?
Did somebody make a motion?
I did, Madam Mayor. I moved to amend it to indefinitely, to tabling indefinitely.
No. Is there support?
Did somebody support it? Okay. Dies for lack of support. Roll call, please.
Costanzo.
No.
Black. Lublin.
Yes.
Osnick.
Yes.
Robertson.
Yes.
Ambrose.
Yes.
Ackley.
Yes. Okay, second reading of chapter 86, amendment to chapter 86 vegetation. Do I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion that we go ahead and have second reading.
Is there support?
Support.
Is there discussion?
I do, Madam Mayor. On the ordinance, it calls for it calls for a permit to take down a tree on one's personal private property, the residence. I think it's another fee that's imposing on our residents, especially ones that have developed properties. nobody's arguing against the value of tree-lined streets, but ordinance like this particular ordinance creates what we call a tree police. And as we've seen in other communities, sometimes this can be used to harass property owners or even fill local coffers.
Is there a particular section that you can refer to?
That's the page you're looking at there.
Yes, in section 86.25.
What page number down here?
Page 63, it's the requiring of the permit. I just don't, I have a problem with telling a person that owns a house on their private property that they have to, unless a tree is diseased, contact their city, spend a fee to remove a tree that they've paid for with their property taxes. Our fees in the city are already very high. Permit fees are very high when you compare it to other communities. I mean, I get, maybe for a furnace or electrical, but, replace a window, a door, this is just another fee or another layer of government that I think it's ridiculous and unfair to ask a resident that you have to ask your government to take down a tree on the back of your property. My question is, maybe one of the questions is, how much would be a tree removal permit be? And is that per tree? So that is my point of inquiry on that.
I would draw your attention to section 86.29 exceptions.
Correct, a disease tree, I did refer to that.
Right. The removal of 2 protected trees per calendar year, other than landmark trees, and occupied one-family residential lots. So that means that they can take down 2 trees a year without a permit. Other than, the only exception being is if it's a quote-unquote landmark tree. And then on occupied one-family residential lots on an acre or more area, the removal of 8 trees, of 8 protected trees per calendar year of not more than 10% of the total number of trees on a lot, whichever is less. And once again, the only exception being the landmark trees. So homeowners are allowed to remove trees on their property without a permit. They can remove up to 2 per year if it's just a small residential lot. Remove up to 8 per year if you have a larger lot. And the only exemption being is if it was considered to be a quote-unquote landmark tree. In that case, there would be a permit.
And how much is a tree permit? Are we estimating it to be?
That I don't know.
We haven't stuff.
That's the ordinance.
That's my only questions.
Did you say you've got another question?
No.
I'm sorry, I thought you said I have another question. All right, anybody else? Roll call, please.
Locke, Lublin,
Yes.
Osnick.
Yes.
Robertson,
Yes.
Ambrose.
Yes.
Costanzo.
Yes.
Ackley.
Yes. Okay, new business item number 1, was moved, so we have number 2, amendment to chapter 50, consumer fireworks.
Yes, this proposed ordinance amendment amends the city's consumer fireworks ordinance, which regulates the use and discharge of consumer fireworks within the city. And essentially what the ordinance amendment does is it brings it in line with some new state law regulations that were adopted several months ago that sort of create some exemptions from local regulation around certain holidays. So they're, around the 4th of July, Memorial Day, Labor Day, so on and so forth. State law says that, locally you can't regulate the discharge of consumer fireworks on those particular dates and times. And that's what this ordinance amendment does. It brings it into line with those new state law dates and times that were recently enacted. You can't adopt more restrictive regulations with regard to the dates and times than what's in this ordinance. However, you could adopt less restrictive dates and times if you wanted to. so.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Move to approve ordinance number C 346-19, an ordinance enacted pursuant to MCL 28.451, the secretary as amended to regulate consumer fireworks within the city of Walled Lake by amending section 50-235 fireworks of the Walled Lake Code of Ordinances.
Okay, is there support?
Support.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Lublin.
Yes.
Osnick.
Yes.
Robertson.
Yes.
Ambrose.
Yes.
Costanzo.
Yes.
Locke, Ackley.
Yes. Okay, the last item on the agenda was request for discussion of city sidewalks.
I do. I have a question. You know, in walking around the city, particularly around our crosswalks, there's a lot of handicapped ADA compliant, those red strips that are missing or damaged quite bad. And my concern is, are we in a liability issue because of them missing? If there's an accident, someone crosses the street because the ADA strips have been ripped out for whatever, I assume a snow plow, but you know, I'm trying to head off an issue or area of concern if it ever does occur.
I've had conversations with Dan, and I know he's going around and they're trying to fix those. I've looked in other communities, they probably are a great idea, but I think the other communities are having the same problem. They seem to be falling apart. But I do know that the DPW is trying to work on them to fix them.
We need to know the address. I mean, if there is, we fix them. That's-
Right.
Well,
if you're looking out for the city, you gotta fix them.
You gotta let them know where they're at.
There's
Make a list.
a list. I'm
Make a
ready.
list.
Well,
Yeah.
if there's a list, you ought to bring it to City Hall, because we need to address that. Bringing it here, you're basically saying that we're on notice and we're instantly liable the moment you make that remark. So
Well-
bring the list so we can fix them.
Well, two of them right now, I can tell you specifically where they're at, is directly right by Stonecrest, at the top of the hill, there by the Lynch Funeral Home.
Why don't you make your list?
Well, no, let him finish. I'll fix them and we'll get it started.
And then the one by Tuffy on the corner of Maple and Pontiac Trail is missing. So, I mean, it'd probably be, the city is small enough, we could probably just drive it once and just see the amount of strips that are missing. But my concern is, you know, if someone does get hurt, to get in front of an issue or potential liability issue.
Of course.
I don't know if there's a new way of doing those anymore, as opposed to those rubber mats being adhered to the concrete, which doesn't look like it's gonna last too long. I don't know if they go to a stamped concrete with a little bumps on it.
I think they've had different ways.
Yeah,
I'm less
There's gotta be a
impressed.
better-
that obviously
They
don't
pour
work.
the concrete, they drop it in when it's wet, and it stays there for a while, but it can pop up when it gets cold.
Well, I
That
think
may be
it's-
what happens.
it's Michigan, everything pops.
So we just need the list. In fact, we can send somebody out to survey the sidewalk in addition to your two that you mentioned, so.
That's what I was, yeah,
Okay,
that was it, thank you.
council comments, Mr. Robertson. Mr. Gabriel.
Yes, because my question wasn't answered during the city manager reports, the departmental reports, I would just ask for my one question, the point of inquiry that I asked about for the $10,000 for the letters spent on the boss letters, $10,000 spent on boss letters, maybe just email city council rather than stopping up and interrupting my workday, just email council what exactly the specifics were on that $10,000 expense.
The $10,000 expense, I'll follow up with an email like you suggested, but $10,000 expense was for projects that we had been doing. So if he's looking for the details of that, we can pull the details and add that to the email that was in there. Okay, these are legitimate expenditures for boss for projects that we sent him on. I thought that was self-explanatory, but if you want to know the detail, I don't bring that with me here, so I can send that out in an email.
Thank you.
Mr. Ambrose.
All set.
All set.
Likewise.
I didn't forget you tonight.
I know. Amazing.
Okay. Mayor's report. I guess I don't have anything. We've had enough discussion tonight. I commended the police and fire department, and I think City Hall's doing a great job. And I'm not sure what our city manager's role was in it, but I'm sure you were in there someplace.
Videotape.
But South Commerce
That
to,
was one of the 10 hours a week that I
yeah,
spent on.
yeah, you're 10 hours a week. South Commerce to the end of the city limits on Pontiac Trail is much better.
I can say that two people had something to do with it. That was Commissioner Wong and Casey Gamble.
Oh, okay.
He doesn't want to take the credit, but I know who did it and pulled the punch. You know, we get things moved up if we can, and that's what this is about. You know, Wall Lake has to be creative. And again, the only guy or gal around that I thought that trumped me, if you will excuse that pun, in terms of being creative is Nova. I would drive to work from time to time, come down Nova at 12 and be angry because that was the worst intersection. It was worse than, or as bad as Maple and Contact some years ago. And I thought to myself, you're the city manager here and you let that intersection get that bad without doing something, because it is their gateway to the mall and everything. So then we found out it's gonna get done, and I found it, but it was not scheduled because it's somebody else's road. But it doesn't mean the city manager can't get involved. So this city manager, who I do not know that well, I've met him a few times, they went to them, it could have been the mayor, I mean the group, the DDA rep, they went, you know what, let's talk. Set them down and said, look, we will front the money, because we've got it. And you give it back to us when you schedule to do the road, but we want the road done now. Pretty creative, and that's what we're trying to do here. That's why the DDA is working well to fund stuff, and we get it back. The DDA is doing its part for the whole city, not just for the business district. They did it in Novi, we're trying to do it now. Paving that road was a big deal. The worst road we got now clearly is Decker. You know, we've touched on every one. I've dealt with repaving the entrances and all that. So the other part of Pontiac needs to get done too. But the worst road we got in the city is Decker, and there's a whole lot of really bad roads over in Friday, and we're gonna be getting on that and see what we can do to remediate some of that. You heard a property owner say today, they're angry, but they should have been angry 20 years ago, because they were neglected for a very long time. We can only do so much at a time, because it does cost money. We're gonna find ways to improve that area too, but the first thing we dealt with, as everybody knows, was the public safety. Putting the fire hydrants in. Some people don't think that they need fire hydrants, but we do, I do, and I think most people did. We get that fixed, get it cleaned up, get the property back, we're gonna try to find ways to fund the improvements in Tri-A, because that's a really big challenge.
Expenses. Okay, we'll take a recess and go into executive session, and then we'll be back on.
Point of inquiry for the audience that are here, we'll back out to vote on the proposal.
Back to vote.
It's just let the public know, so we'll move back to vote on the PUD.
Right.
On to recess.
Is this mine or yours? 3 minutes. Take it.
3 minutes.
My close proximity to you.
5 years. 3 minutes.
I'll give it to you.
Okay, let me tell everybody.
We approved a tree ordinance just now.